Meng Dongxing's voice was interrupted when his sister, Meng Qingxue, walked out of the courtyard. He was happy to see her safe, but immediately got angry at me. He heard she became my maidservant and thought I tricked her with some dirty scheme. He glared at me and said he would never let it go if that was true. But Qingxue shut him down right away. She told him it was her own choice and he should mind his own business. She scolded him, saying he should focus on passing the Lingyun Tower trial and becoming an inner court student instead of coming here to make trouble. Dongxing couldn't believe his sister was taking my side. She raised her eyebrows and asked if he had grown too bold to listen to her anymore. He had no choice but to back off. He gave me one last fierce look and warned me not to bully his sister, saying he would risk his life to come after me if anything happened to her. Then he left. After he was gone, Qingxue looked at me with grateful eyes and thanked me. Even she hadn't expected that her extreme body condition, which had troubled her for over 10 years, could be solved by me so easily. I waved my hand and told her she was my maidservant now, so saving her was only natural. Then I rubbed my chin and said life in the outer court was getting pretty boring. Maybe it was time for me to go have some fun in the inner court. Qingxue agreed and whispered to me that the inner court had much better training resources and even relics left by the academy's ancestors. She mentioned a sword mark hall where inner court students could study sword intent. More importantly, she said the 9 Academies martial tournament of the Great Xia Kingdom was coming soon. Only inner court students could qualify to compete, and whoever stood out in that tournament could enter the Yanhuang Martial Academy, the sacred place of martial arts, and step into a much bigger world. That got my attention right away. I decided to go challenge the Lingyun Tower immediately and become an inner court student. We walked together toward the tower, and when we arrived, a huge crowd had already gathered. Dongxing was there too. He saw me coming with his sister and let out a cold snort, asking if I was also planning to challenge the tower. I smiled casually and said the outer court had bored me to death, so I was heading to the inner court for some fun. The moment those words left my mouth, every pair of eyes in the crowd turned to stare at me. Everyone around started whispering about me. Some didn't know who I was, but others quickly told them I was Jiang Chen, the most talked about person in the Lingyun Academy lately. While they were all chattering, my eyes landed on a tall green stone tablet standing next to the Lingyun Tower. It was covered with nearly 100 names carved into it, and the top 3 names glowed with a faint light, standing out from the rest. I asked Qingxue what the names meant, but before she could answer, Dongxing jumped in. He explained that this was a ranking of everyone who had ever challenged the tower. The Lingyun Tower had 10 floors, and the inner court identity token was placed on the 10th floor. Anyone who passed all 10 floors would become an inner court student. But the tower also measured potential. The less time you took, the greater your talent. The 100 names on the tablet represented the most outstanding geniuses in the entire history of the academy. I found that pretty interesting. I asked who the person ranked first was and how long they took. Dongxing told me the name at the top was Shi Xingqi, an incredible genius from 30 years ago who cleared the tower in less than 10 minutes. Nobody had broken his record since. Then Dongxing sneered at me, saying I shouldn't even dream of comparing myself to Shi Xingqi. He doubted I could even get my name on the tablet at all. Just then, the crowd got excited because the second-ranked gold student, Li Xingjie, walked out of the tower holding an inner court identity token. He had passed. Everyone looked at him with envy. Seeing that Li Xingjie, someone he had always looked down on, had already succeeded, Dongxing couldn't sit still anymore. He rushed straight into the tower. About 15 minutes later, Dongxing came out holding his own inner court token. The stone tablet hummed, and a new name appeared at the very bottom of the rankings. He looked over at me with a smug grin and bragged about getting his name on the tablet. I curled my lip and said it was nothing impressive, just getting the last spot on the list. He shot back, telling me to talk big only after I managed to get my own name up there. I looked at him calmly. Just getting on the tablet? That was way too boring for me. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it big. I let my voice ring out so everyone could hear. Today, I was going to break the record set by Shi Xingqi. From now on, the top spot on that tablet would belong to me. The moment I said I would break the record, everything went dead silent. Then after a few seconds, everyone snapped out of it and started mocking me. They couldn't believe what they just heard. People were saying Shi Xingqi was the most monstrous genius in the hundreds of years since the academy was founded, and his record couldn't just be broken because someone wanted to. One guy even said if I could make it into the top 10, he would kneel down and call me daddy. Dongxing burst out laughing too, saying I had no idea how high the sky was. I just smiled and said there was only one way to find out. Then I walked toward the tower entrance with everyone watching. Behind me, Dongxing started complaining to Qingxue again, calling me an arrogant madman and questioning why she would follow someone like me. But she cut him off coldly. She told him to stop meddling in her business and warned him never to provoke me, because I wasn't someone he could afford to mess with. She said that even though I seemed arrogant, I never made empty boasts. If I said I was going to break the record, then the top spot would definitely be mine. Dongxing couldn't believe his sister was serious. He laughed and mocked her, asking if she had lost her mind for believing I could surpass a legendary figure like Shi Xingqi. That was when my voice came from behind him. I told him his sister wasn't crazy at all. Shi Xingqi might be a legend of this academy, but to me, legends existed to be broken. After hearing him hype up the record so much, I expected it to be really hard. Turns out it was way too easy. Dongxing's face changed completely. He looked up and saw me walking out of the tower, already holding the inner court identity token in my hand. He just stood there frozen like he had seen a ghost. He realized that after I entered the tower, he had only chatted with his sister for a little while, 5 minutes at most. But in that short time, I had already cleared all 10 floors and come back out. Shi Xingqi's record was 9 minutes. That meant I didn't just break the record. I cut the time nearly in half. For the first time, real fear appeared in Dongxing's eyes as he stared at me. Everyone around was just as shocked as Dongxing. Their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. Less than 5 minutes. That was all it took me to clear the entire Lingyun Tower. People started shouting that it was impossible, that something must be wrong with the tower, because the stone tablet hadn't reacted yet. But right then, the tablet started shaking and a blinding light shot up from it. My name appeared at the very top, glowing in golden letters, pushing Shi Xingqi down to second place. And the most unlucky one was Dongxing. His name had only been on the tablet for a few minutes before I knocked him off completely. Everyone stared at my name sitting at the top, unable to believe what just happened. A 30-year-old record shattered just like that. But I didn't care about any of that. I just took my inner court token and walked away while everyone was still standing there in shock. I went back to the gold student quarters, packed up my things, and headed into the inner court with Qingxue and my fire scale beast. After getting my inner court robes and settling in, I couldn't wait to check out the Sword Mark Hall that Qingxue had mentioned. The Sword Mark Hall was one of the core buildings of the inner court. Legend said that a powerful ancestor of the academy once left 3 sword marks inside. Each mark contained that ancestor's sword intent, a kind of martial truth that was far above any ordinary fighting technique. Sword intent was incredibly hard to comprehend. In the hundreds of years of the academy's history, only a handful of geniuses had ever managed to grasp it. But anyone who did would become unbeatable against opponents of the same level, and could even fight people above their own rank. Qingxue brought me to the entrance. Any inner court student could enter, but it cost 10,000 student points each time. Most people didn't bother spending that much on something so hard to understand, unless they were top-ranked geniuses. Qingxue paid the points for me, and I walked in. The hall was small and simple, just a square stone sitting in the middle, nothing else. I glanced at the stone and saw the 3 sword marks carved into it. Each mark was incredibly sharp, as if the marks themselves were actual swords. The moment I laid eyes on them, experience flooded into me. With just one look at the sword mark stone, I comprehended the first level of sword intent. The moment the system notifications rang, I felt the essence of the first level of sword intent flow into me. I was excited, but also amazed once again by how powerful my 100 times cultivation system was. Sword intent was one of the strongest types of martial truth. Most sword cultivators couldn't even scratch the surface of it in their entire lifetime. But I just glanced at the stone once and understood the first level. If those genius sword masters across the Xinwu continent found out, they would probably cough up blood from rage. I studied the stone a bit longer, but when I noticed I wasn't gaining any more experience from it, I turned around and left. Qingxue was shocked to see me come out after only about 10 minutes. She explained that anyone who entered the hall normally stayed the entire day, since 10,000 student points was a lot of money. Most inner court students couldn't even earn that much in a whole month. I casually told her I had gained some understanding inside and could continue working on it on my own later. She stared at me in total disbelief. She almost thought something was wrong with her ears. 10 minutes, and I already had a breakthrough? I smiled and told her it was perfectly normal to gain some insight from studying the ancestors' sword marks. Normal? She looked like she was about to lose her mind. She had visited the sword mark hall over 10 times herself and barely grasped even the tiniest bit of sword intent. Yet here I was, walking out after my first visit in just 10 minutes, casually telling her I had already gained something. She was completely crushed. Right then, a cold voice called out my name. I looked up and saw a tall, handsome young man striding toward the sword mark hall. I narrowed my eyes. It was Lin Yu, the former #1 young talent of Tsongshan City, now ranked 3rd on the Lingyun rankings. I hadn't expected to run into him so soon after entering the inner court. It seemed we were fated to keep crossing paths. Lin Yu glared at me, with killing intent radiating from his body. He said he had been planning to come find me, but I saved him the trouble by showing up on my own. I looked at him calmly and said that even if I was standing right in front of him, there was nothing he could do about it. Lin Yu glared at me with dark eyes and demanded to know if I was the one who killed his father. I told him straight. His father came to kill me, so he should have been prepared to die. He brought it on himself. Lin Yu laughed in rage and swore he would avenge his father no matter what. He never imagined that I, someone once known as the biggest waste in Tsongshan City, could rise so fast and become this powerful. His father died by my hand, and because of that, the entire Lin family had to leave Tsongshan City. He had wanted to tear me apart for a long time, but he knew my strength was dangerous, so he held back his hatred and trained hard instead. In just a few days, he pushed himself from the 8th level of Qi control to the 9th, and even managed to grasp the early form of sword intent in the sword mark hall. He believed he could now fight even some innate realm experts. So when he saw me here, there was no way he was letting me go. I smiled and told him he was welcome to try getting his revenge, if he had the ability. He snarled that back when he ruled Tsongshan City, I was nothing but trash. Even if I got lucky and shed that title, I still had no right to act arrogant in front of him. Then he challenged me to a fight to the death. Students passing by the sword mark hall started gathering to watch. They whispered about who I was and why the 3rd-ranked fighter on the Lingyun rankings wanted a death match with me. Some recognized Qingxue standing beside me and figured Lin Yu's old feelings for her were part of it. Qingxue frowned and warned Lin Yu coldly. She told him if he didn't want to end up like his father, he should disappear right now. She said she was only giving him this advice because he once helped her, and that he should leave while he still could. Lin Yu's face turned ugly. He asked what I had done for her to make her defend me like this. Then he mocked me for hiding behind a woman and told me to come out and fight if I was really a man. I just smiled. First, I told him that having a woman willing to stand up for me was a skill in itself. Second, he was giving himself way too much credit. Dealing with trash like him didn't require anyone else's help. If he really wanted a fight, I was happy to oblige. I stood there with my hands behind my back and told Lin Yu to go ahead and attack. I wanted to see what the so-called #1 genius of Tsongshan City was really made of. Lin Yu's face twisted with rage. He screamed about me killing his father and destroying his family, then launched himself at me like lightning, throwing a full power punch straight at my chest. I didn't move. I didn't dodge, didn't block, didn't even flinch. I just stood there. The crowd thought I had lost my mind. They looked at me like I was an idiot. Taking a hit from a fighter above the 8th level of Qi control with no defense at all? They figured I was either showing off or just asking to die. Even an innate realm expert probably wouldn't dare do something that reckless. Then Lin Yu's fist slammed into me. And something shocking happened. I only stepped back half a step and steadied myself. Meanwhile, Lin Yu stumbled backward more than 10 steps. The crowd went completely silent, then erupted. They couldn't believe I had just tanked his hit with my body alone like it was nothing. I gave him a contemptuous smile and told him his punch was way too weak. That drove Lin Yu over the edge. He roared and gathered fierce energy in his palm. A massive transparent hand, 2 or 3 meters wide, formed above him. He unleashed his mystic rank technique, the startling cloud palm, and sent it crashing down on me. Again, I didn't move. I didn't resist or dodge. I actually felt a flicker of excitement watching it come. The giant palm slammed into me and swallowed my entire body in its force. When the energy finally faded and I appeared again, I was still standing in the exact same spot without a single scratch on me. Everyone's eyes went wide. The third-ranked genius on the Lingyun rankings had used a mystic rank martial technique at full power, and it couldn't even leave a mark on me when I wasn't even defending. The whole crowd was thinking the same thing. Is this guy even human? Linyu stared at me in disbelief, screaming that it was impossible. He was a 9th-level chi control warrior who just used a mystic rank technique, and he couldn't even break through my body's defense. I looked at him calmly and asked if he had enjoyed his turn, because now it was mine. I clenched my fist, and my bones crackled. I stomped the ground hard and launched myself at Linyu like an arrow. My fist had no energy waves around it at all, just pure physical force. I threw a clean punch straight at his head. He met it with his own fist wrapped in fierce energy, and our blows collided with a thunderous boom. Linyu's body shook, and he went flying back several meters. Before he could steady himself, I was already on top of him again with another devastating punch. His face changed, and he quickly threw up an energy shield around his body to block me. But my fist smashed right through it like it was glass. Linyu flew backward like a broken kite and crashed to the ground. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. I looked down at him and said that for someone who used to be the #1 young talent in Songshan City and was ranked 3rd on the Lingyun rankings, he was pretty disappointing. I told him I could beat him into a cripple without even using any chi at all. The crowd was stunned again. People couldn't believe that Linyu, a genius of that level, was getting destroyed so badly. They noticed that throughout the whole fight, I hadn't used a single trace of internal energy. My physical body alone was already this terrifyingly strong. Linyu's face was dark as he struggled to stand up through the pain. He admitted my strength was beyond anything he expected, but swore he would not lose to me today. Then a long sword glowing with cold light appeared in his hand. He gripped it tightly, and a sharp, piercing aura exploded from his body. The swords carried by some of the nearby students started trembling and humming on their own. Linyu said that after learning I killed his father, he sat in the sword mark hall for 3 days straight until he finally comprehended sword intent. Today, he was going to show me its power. Sword intent. The crowd was shocked that Linyu had actually comprehended it. Everyone started saying he truly deserved to be called the most talented genius in the academy. They said sword intent was one of the most dominating martial truths, and that I was probably in serious trouble now. Even Qingxue looked worried. She knew better than anyone how hard sword intent was to grasp. She herself had only managed to touch the surface after many attempts. But Lin Yu's sword intent had already taken a rudimentary form. Once he refined it further, he could develop true first-level sword intent. Anyone who mastered sword intent could be unbeatable against opponents of the same rank and could even fight above their level. But I stayed completely calm. I told Lin Yu he had some talent for comprehending sword intent, but his unfinished rudimentary form was no threat to me at all. Then I turned to Qingxue and asked to borrow her sword. She was surprised but quickly pulled a silver sword from her storage ring and tossed it to me. I caught it and spun it in a beautiful arc. Then I told everyone what happened. When I was looking at the sword mark stone in the sword mark hall earlier, I accidentally comprehended sword intent myself. Since Lin Yu wanted to fight with sword intent, I would use mine against his. I was going to show him what real sword intent looked like. The crowd's jaws dropped. They couldn't believe I was claiming to have comprehended sword intent too, and that I did it by accident on my first visit to the hall. They thought I was treating sword intent like cheap cabbage you could just pick up off the street. Lin Yu burst out laughing and mocked me. He asked if I was serious about comprehending sword intent on my very first trip to the sword mark hall. I shrugged and asked why not. He grinned coldly and said he would love to see my so-called accidental sword intent. Then he slashed his sword at me with full force. A gray-white blade of energy shot straight toward me, carrying a killing intent so fierce it felt like it could pierce through anything and wither all life. I watched it coming with a calm expression. My eyes focused, and a solid, powerful sword intent erupted from my body, shooting into the sky. I gripped the silver sword, made one simple, effortless swing, and shouted, "Break!" My simple, effortless swing cut through Lin Yu's sword intent attack like it was nothing. The terrifying force behind my strike rushed straight toward him. Lin Yu couldn't believe it. He roared that it was impossible for me to have such powerful sword intent. He gritted his teeth, pushed his own sword intent to the absolute limit, and swung his blade at me again. Our attacks collided, and energy exploded in every direction. Lin Yu was sent flying backward, coughing up blood. I stood there like a straight, unmoving sword, completely unaffected by the shockwave. The crowd went wild. They couldn't believe Lin Yu lost, even after using sword intent. People were saying my sword intent was countless times stronger than his, so his defeat wasn't surprising at all. Some brought up how I broke Shi Xingqi's tower record. They hadn't believed it before, but now they had no choice. They called me a monster among monsters. But the most shocked person of all was Qingxue. She practiced the way of the sword herself and understood sword intent better than most. She could tell that the sword intent I released had already reached the stage of turning from formless to solid. That was true first-level sword intent, far beyond Lin Yu's half-formed version. If I had trained in swordsmanship since childhood, reaching this level at my age would have been impressive, but at least understandable. But I wasn't even a sword cultivator. This was my very first time ever touching sword intent, and I spent less than 10 minutes in the Swordmark Hall. She simply couldn't comprehend how anyone could be this gifted. While everyone was still frozen in shock, I gripped the sword and walked toward Lin Yu with no expression on my face. His pale face filled with panic. He asked what I was planning to do. I reminded him calmly. If I remembered correctly, he was the one who called this a fight to the death. Since it was a death match, I had no reason not to kill him. My eyes flashed with sharp killing intent. I swung the sword, and a silver arc of light shot toward the spot between Lin Yu's eyebrows, fast as lightning. My sword was incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, the blade of light was right in front of Lin Yu's face. He screamed, "No," with despair in his eyes. He had no strength left to fight. I looked at him coldly, like I was looking at a dead man. His talent wasn't bad, but he was a threat that would never stop coming after me. Since he was the one who wanted a death match, I had no reason to let him live. But just as my sword was about to pierce his skull, a figure in red robes dropped from the sky. With a casual wave of his hand, my sword light vanished into nothing. He sighed softly and asked if I could give him some face and let things end here. I narrowed my eyes and asked who he was. He smiled and introduced himself as Yin Songming, an elder of the inner court. I pointed out that Lin Yu was the one who proposed the death match, so it wasn't really fair for the elder to interfere. Yin Songming explained that death matches had to take place at the official life and death platform. What we did was against the rules. He also said the Lingyun Academy had always ranked near the bottom among the 9 academies of the Great Xia Kingdom. Now that 2 students had comprehended sword intent, he didn't want anything to happen to either of us. Then he pulled out a sword glowing with red light from his storage ring. He called it the Flame Dragon Sword, a rare second-grade spirit weapon, and offered it to me as compensation for stopping the fight. The crowd went crazy with envy. Spirit weapons were extremely hard to forge and incredibly rare. Even the lowest first-grade spirit weapon was worth a fortune. A second-grade one was something every sword cultivator dreamed of. I figured this old man was way too strong for me to fight. If he wanted to protect Lin Yu, there was nothing I could do about it. Getting a flame dragon sword out of this was already a great deal. So I smiled, accepted the sword, and agreed to spare Lin Yu's life. I didn't even glance at Lin Yu again. I said goodbye to Elder Yin and left. Qingxue and I headed back to our quarters. But when we reached the courtyard, we found a crowd gathered there. In the middle, my fire-scale beast was covered in wounds, roaring angrily. In front of it, a massive black python at least 10 meters long was staring it down, ready to strike. My expression turned ice cold. I shot up into the air and landed right in the center of the crowd. My freezing voice rang out. Whoever let this overgrown worm hurt my fire-scale beast had better come out and face death right now. I dropped from the sky and everyone froze. People started whispering, wondering who I was and whether I was the owner of the fire-scale beast. Some said I was lucky to have a 6th-grade beast cub, but others sneered that it didn't matter since someone named Wu Feiyu had set his eyes on it. Then a proud-looking young man in black robes stepped out from behind the giant python. He looked down at me and asked if the fire-scale beast was mine. I ignored his question and stared at him coldly, asking if he was the one who ordered his overgrown worm to hurt my beast. He smirked and said he originally just wanted to tame it, not hurt it. But since the fire-scale beast refused to submit, it was its own fault. My eyes turned icy. I told him my fire scale beast wasn't something he could just take whenever he felt like it. He said his name was Wu Feiyu, and that anything he wanted, he got. He told me I wasn't worthy of owning a fire scale beast. I laughed coldly and asked if he thought he was. He puffed up his chest and announced he was a third-grade beast tamer, almost at fourth grade. He claimed the fire scale beast would only reach its full potential in his hands. I told him a mere third-grade beast tamer had no right to show off in front of me. The fire scale beast was mine, and how I raised it was my business. He waved his hand impatiently and said he didn't want to argue. He had his eye on my beast, and if I was smart, I would sell it to him. I refused flat out. He offered 100,000 gold coins and warned me that owning a sixth-grade beast without the strength to protect it would only bring me disaster. I told him once and for all, the fire scale beast was not for sale at any price. A sixth-grade beast with divine bloodline couldn't be measured in money. Offering 100,000 gold coins was basically robbery. Wu Feiyu's eyes flashed dangerously. He gave me one last chance, threatening that if I refused, I wouldn't even get the gold. I told him I already said no, and asked if he couldn't understand simple words. I was done talking. He and his pet snake hurt my fire scale beast, and there was going to be a price for that. I fixed my cold gaze on him and let my voice echo through the air. I was giving him one choice. Did he want to die, or did he want his python to die? The crowd thought I was crazy for talking to Wu Feiyu like that. People were shaking their heads, saying anyone who crossed Wu Feiyu in this academy never ended up well. They figured I was as good as dead. Wu Feiyu burst out laughing and asked if I even knew who he was. He was a famous genius beast tamer at the academy, and his older brother Wu Feilong was the #1 talent on the Lingyun rankings. Nobody in this place dared to mess with him. He thought it was the biggest joke in the world that some nobody like me dared to threaten him. I told him I didn't need to know who he was. All I knew was that he hurt my fire scale beast and had to pay for it. Since he wouldn't choose between his life and his snakes, I would choose for him. His black cloud python's life was mine. I moved like a ghost and appeared right in front of the giant python. I threw one plain, simple punch at its head. That punch carried power equal to an innate realm expert strike. The python's massive 10-meter body was sent flying through the air. It crashed into the ground several meters away, smashing a huge crater into the earth. Blood poured from its shattered head. It twitched a few times and then stopped breathing. Dead silence fell over everything. Everyone stared at me with pure horror in their eyes. A black cloud python was a second-grade high-level beast, strong enough to match a 9th-level chi control warrior. Even the top geniuses on the Lingyun rankings couldn't kill one with a single punch. Nobody could understand how I did it. Wu Feiyu finally snapped out of his shock. His eyes burned with rage, and he screamed at me, calling me a bastard for killing his python. He had spent enormous effort to get that beast, and now it was dead with one punch. I looked at him coldly and told him he talked too much. I pointed at the python's corpse and gave him two choices in a voice completely void of emotion. Disappear from my sight right now, or end up just like his snake. My cold, murderous voice made Wu Feiyu's body tremble. He was a beast tamer. His whole fighting style depended on controlling his pets. His own strength was nothing special, having only recently broken through to the chi control realm. With his black cloud python dead, he stood no chance against me. He gritted his teeth and told me I was the first person to ever humiliate him like this at the academy. He swore this wasn't over, then turned and left. The crowd buzzed with amazement. People were saying my strength might even rival Wu Feilong, the #1 genius on the Lingyun rankings. They wondered where such a monster had come from. After everyone cleared out, I walked into my courtyard with the fire scale beast. Qingxue followed, right behind me. The onlookers finally figured out who I was, the legendary guy who made the beautiful genius Meng Qingxue his maidservant. Back inside, I used my beast tamer healing technique to fix the fire scale beast's injuries. Then I gave it a serious warning not to wander off alone anymore. A 6th-grade beast cub was something every beast tamer dreamed of owning, and even regular warriors would be tempted by it. My first day in the inner court had been explosive, comprehending sword intent, defeating the 3rd-ranked Lin Yu, and killing Wu Feiyu's black cloud python with a single punch. News spread through the entire inner court instantly, and my reputation shot up to nearly the same level as Wu Feilong, the top-ranked genius. After that wild first day, things quieted down. I spent several days just cultivating in my courtyard. Thanks to my 100 times system multiplying all my experience, I filled up my 9th level chi control experience bar without even needing pills. I successfully broke through to the 1st level of the innate realm. Just as I was about to go outside for some fresh air after my breakthrough, I heard noises coming from outside my courtyard. I frowned and walked out to check. In the outer yard, a tall young man around 20 years old was standing arrogantly in the middle of the space. The 2 servants the academy had assigned to take care of my daily needs had clearly been beaten up and looked completely roughed up. Anger flashed in my eyes. I strode toward the courtyard and let my cold voice ring out. I didn't care who he was. He needed to get out of my territory immediately and stop causing trouble on my ground. The young man raised an eyebrow when he saw me walk out. He guessed I was Jiang Chen. I told him it didn't matter who I was. What mattered was that he was causing trouble on my ground and had beaten up my people. He waved it off like it was nothing, calling my servants worthless dogs who dared to block his way. He said he was here to see Meng Qingxue and ordered me to go fetch her, speaking to me like I was some kind of errand boy. I stared at him coldly and told him that while he saw my servants as dogs, in my eyes, he was lower than a dog. That set him off. He raged that I was just an inner court student and had no right to insult him. He said I must be tired of living. I pointed out that he wasn't even from this academy, yet he barged into the inner court uninvited. He laughed arrogantly and announced his name was Meng Xingyu. He boasted that there was nowhere in the entire Great Xia Kingdom he didn't dare to go, let alone some small academy like this. Then he impatiently demanded again that I bring Qingxue out, promising to spare my life if I obeyed. I told him Qingxue was my maidservant now. He was nothing, and my maidservant wasn't someone he could see just because he wanted to. That pushed him over the edge. He said he gave me a chance to live, and I chose death instead. He opened his palm, and his innate true energy formed a massive phantom hand that grabbed toward me. So he really was an innate realm expert. I narrowed my eyes, drew my flame dragon sword, and swung at the phantom hand. My sharp sword energy shattered it instantly, and the blade kept going without slowing down, slicing right across his palm. Blood sprayed out from a deep wound on his right hand. He stared at his bleeding palm in shock and blurted out that I was using innate level sword energy. He couldn't believe a mere inner court student was already at the innate realm. As far as he knew, the only innate level student at the academy was Wu Feilong, ranked first on the Lingyun rankings. I looked at him without any expression and said that if someone as worthless as him could reach the innate realm, why couldn't I? Then I raised my flame dragon sword and pointed it straight at him. I told him if he knew what was good for him, he would get out of my courtyard immediately. Otherwise, I would take his worthless life with one sword strike. Meng Xingyu laughed and said I wasn't worthy of threatening to take his life. He admitted my breakthrough to the innate realm surprised him, but said that was all. I still had no right to act arrogant in front of him. A blood-red saber radiating killing intent appeared in his hand. Before he could attack, Qingshue's cold voice rang out from inside the courtyard. She appeared next to me in a flash, staring at Meng Xingyu with ice-cold eyes. She demanded to know why he was here. He said he was sent by the young master to bring her back to the Meng family. He pointed his saber at me and asked if it was true she willingly became my maidservant. Qingxue told him her business was none of his concern. She ordered him to go back and tell Meng Tianheng she would return to the Meng family within 10 days. He could leave now. He agreed to give her 10 days, but said that as a noble lady of the Meng family, becoming some nobody's maidservant was a disgrace. He wanted to kill me to restore the family's honor. Qingxue warned him not to think too highly of himself just because he was from the Meng family. She said she was stopping him for his own good, and if he really tried to fight me, he would be the one who regretted it. He told her to step aside so he could see for himself. Qingxue gave him one last cold look, then turned to me and said I could go ahead, just leave him alive. She explained that the Meng family was one of the 4 great noble houses in the imperial capital of the Great Xia Kingdom and the top martial arts family in the country. Killing him would bring me unnecessary trouble. I nodded. I stared at Meng Xingyu coldly and told him I would spare his life today for Qingshue's sake. But escaping death didn't mean escaping punishment. He hurt my people on my ground, so he was going to leave an arm behind as payment. He laughed darkly and said his arm wasn't something I could just take. He roared that I humiliated his family by making Qingxue my maidservant, and he would cut me down today to restore the Meng family's reputation. His blood-red saber erupted with a massive blade of crimson energy, eerie and menacing. He unleashed his strongest move, the mystic mid-grade technique, Blood Fury Saber, swinging it down at me with everything he had, clearly intending to kill. I looked at him coldly and told him he was too full of himself. He was still going to leave that arm behind. I tightened my grip on the flame dragon's sword, and a terrifying wave of sword intent exploded from my body. The moment my sword intent surged upward, the spiritual energy in the sky above the courtyard rapidly gathered into countless blades of sword energy. They all converged above my head and formed a massive transparent phantom sword. I shouted, "Cut!" And the giant phantom sword swung down with unstoppable force, smashing through Meng Xingyu's crimson blade energy like it was paper. It kept going and slammed straight into him. He screamed and was sent flying backward, crashing to the ground several meters away. A horrifying wound stretched from his chest to his left arm. His entire left arm hung limp and useless, blood pouring out like a fountain. He clutched his severed arm in agony, staring at me with pure terror. He gasped that I had comprehended sword intent. He never imagined someone my age could reach the innate realm and master sword intent at the same time. That kind of talent would be rare even at the legendary Yanhuang Martial Academy. I told him to get lost. I was sparing his miserable life only for Qingshue's sake. If there was a next time, I would show no mercy. He glared at me with a dark expression, said he would remember me, then leaped away and disappeared. High up in the sky, hundreds of meters away, Elder Yin Songming had been watching everything. He muttered to himself that in just a few days I had broken through to the innate realm. He said my strength was already enough to compete with the top geniuses of all 9 academies, and that 3 months from now, the Lingyun Academy would surely shine at the 9 academies tournament. Then he vanished. After Meng Xingyu left, Qingxue came to me looking apologetic. She explained that she came from the Meng family, one of the 4 great noble houses in the imperial capital, and she needed to go back for a while. If she didn't, they would send even stronger people, which would only bring me more trouble. She promised to return within half a year to honor our agreement. I smiled and told her to go ahead. The 9 academies tournament was in 3 months, and I would be coming to the imperial capital too. She nodded and said she would wait for me there. Then she left. After Qingxue was gone, I left the academy as well. To avoid more trouble over the fire scale beast, I went to the Moonmark trading house and got a pet bag to keep it hidden inside. Then, with nothing else to do, I headed toward the Alchemy Guild in Lingyun City. I had skills in alchemy, formations, and beast taming, but no official credentials for any of them. So I figured I would start by getting myself an alchemist badge, just for fun. I was walking casually down the main road toward the Alchemy Guild when I heard the clattering of horse hooves behind me. The street turned chaotic as people scrambled to both sides. A fiery red horse came charging through like a flame, and in seconds it was right behind me. A girl in purple robes was riding it. She shouted for everyone to get out of her way, calling people dogs. I just glanced at her and kept walking without moving aside. That made her furious. She cracked her leather whip straight at my head. Without even turning around, I reached back and caught the whip in my hand. Then I yanked it hard. She lost her balance and fell right off the horse, landing on her backside on the dirty ground. She screamed and went red with rage, cursing at me for daring to touch her. She looked like an angry tigress. I told her calmly that if she could attack me, I could attack her right back. That made her even angrier. She turned to a middle-aged woman who had caught up behind her and screamed for the woman to kill me. But the older woman frowned and scolded the girl, calling her Zilwan. She reminded her not to cause trouble and to remember why they came to Lingyun City in the first place. The girl realized she had important business to deal with and couldn't waste time here. She glared at me hatefully and warned that next time she saw me, I wouldn't be so lucky. Then she left with the older woman. I didn't bother saying anything and continued walking. About 10 minutes later, I arrived at a grand building in the center of Lingyun City. Above the entrance, 5 ancient characters glowed with a faint fiery light, Alchemy Guild. I paused for a moment, then walked toward the door. A tall, burly guard immediately blocked my path and barked at me, saying this was the Alchemy Guild and random people weren't allowed near it. He demanded to know what I wanted. I told him casually that I just wanted to go inside and pick up an alchemist badge for fun. His face turned dark instantly. He clearly thought I was out of my mind. The guard glared at me and demanded I show him a letter of introduction. I had no idea what he was talking about. He scoffed and explained that anyone coming to take the alchemist exam needed to either be brought by a master or present their master's recommendation letter. Without one, I had to leave. I told him I didn't have a letter, but I was genuinely here for the exam. I suggested he go inside and tell them that Yan Qingxian sent me. He burst out laughing. He said Yan Qingxian was one of the 3 greatest 6th-grade alchemists in the entire Great Xia Kingdom, and there was no way someone like me could be connected to a master of that level. He thought I was joking. I was getting impatient. I told him coldly he had 2 choices: let me in or go fetch someone in charge. He should stop wasting my time. He puffed up and warned me not to cause trouble at the Alchemy Guild. I stared at him and told him not to look down on people. He wouldn't let me in now, but soon he would be kneeling and begging me to enter. He laughed it off, clearly not taking me seriously. Right then, a surprised voice came from inside the guild entrance. A middle-aged man wearing a 2nd-grade senior alchemist badge hurried out. It was Zhu Mingyuan from the Baodin Pavilion, someone both the guard and I recognized. The guard's heart sank. There was nobody else at the entrance except me and him. If Zhu Mingyuan was calling someone, Master Jiang, it had to be me. Zhu Mingyuan jogged up to me and asked respectfully what brought me to the Alchemy Guild. I glanced at the guard and said casually that I came to pick up an alchemist badge, but this man blocked me at the door. Zhu Mingyuan's expression turned cold instantly as his gaze fell on the guard. The guard's face went completely white. Before anyone could say another word, he dropped to his knees in front of me. He stammered that he was wrong, that he had eyes but couldn't see greatness, and begged me to forgive him. Exactly what I told him would happen. The guard was on his knees begging, all dignity forgotten. If even a respected 2nd-grade senior alchemist like Zhu Mingyuan treated me with such respect, the guard knew I could crush him easier than stepping on an ant. I didn't bother making things difficult for him. I just asked if I could go in now. He jumped up with relief and eagerly gestured for me to enter, calling me Master Jiang over and over. Zhu Mingyuan offered to guide me since it was my first time at the guild. I agreed, and we walked inside together. I asked him why he was here today. He smiled bitterly and admitted he had come to take the 3rd-grade alchemist exam, but failed. We reached the exam hall, where a faint herbal fragrance filled the air. Inside, I saw about 10 stone platforms in the center, each with a pill furnace and various alchemy ingredients laid out on top. 7 or 8 young people were already sitting at the platforms, looking eager to begin. To my surprise, the purple-robed girl who had tried to whip me on the street earlier was among them. She looked just as shocked to see me. At the front of the hall sat an impressive white-haired old man. On his chest was a silver alchemist badge with 4 stars. Zhu Mingyuan whispered to me that this was Jiang Chen, the president of the Lingyun City Alchemy Guild and the city's only 4th-grade alchemy master. I asked Zhu Mingyuan about the young people at the platforms. He explained that normally a grandmaster like Jiang Chen wouldn't personally oversee anything below a 3rd-grade exam. But word had spread that the old master was looking to take on a disciple, so these people were probably here hoping to impress him. Jiang Chen noticed us and asked Zhu Mingyuan with a light smile whether he had brought a student to take the exam. Zhu Mingyuan quickly said he wasn't qualified to be my teacher. The old master raised an eyebrow with curiosity and asked if I was here for the alchemist exam. I nodded and told him plainly, I was here to take the 3rd-grade alchemist exam. The hall went dead silent the moment I said I was here for the 3rd-grade exam. The 7 or 8 young people at the stone platforms looked at me like I was insane. Then they started mocking me, saying I was out of my mind and probably couldn't even pass a 1st-grade exam. Even Jiang Chen was stunned. But then he glanced at Zhu Mingyuan standing calmly beside me and seemed to wonder if I might actually be serious. He asked if I really wanted to take the 3rd-grade exam. I shrugged and said sure, but if this place could test for 4th grade, I wouldn't mind grabbing a 4th-grade badge instead. That set the whole hall on fire. Everyone exploded with disbelief and laughter. They said I was the most arrogant person they had ever seen. One guy said if I could become a 4th-grade alchemist, he would be more powerful than the great master Yan Qingxian herself. Even Zhu Mingyuan was shocked this time. He had assumed 3rd grade was my limit. But knowing me, if I said I could do 4th grade, I probably meant it. A 4th-grade alchemist at 15 or 16 years old, that was beyond insane. Jiang Chen's eyes flickered with interest. He said his guild could only test up to 3rd grade, then asked what level badge I currently held. I told him I didn't have one at all. The whole room burst into laughter again. Someone without even a basic badge talking about 4th grade. They thought it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Jiang Chen smiled and explained the rules. I had to start from 1st grade and work my way up, passing each level before moving to the next. He asked if I still wanted to continue. He clearly wanted to see whether I was all talk or the real thing. I nodded and said fine, I would go level by level. I walked over and sat down at one of the stone platforms. The seat I picked happened to be right next to the purple-robed girl from the street. She sneered at me immediately, saying she never expected to see me here. She told me to leave now before I embarrassed myself by failing even the 1st grade test. I glanced at her and asked what my business had to do with her. Then I let my voice ring through the entire hall. A mere 1st grade pill? I could refine one in 3 minutes. 3 minutes to refine a 1st grade pill. The other young alchemists were completely speechless. They didn't even bother mocking me anymore. 3 minutes wasn't even enough time to prepare ingredients and heat up the furnace. They thought I was a total idiot. Jiang Chen announced it was time to begin. He said the 1st grade exam was simple. Just produce one properly formed 1st grade pill using any method. Everyone started moving. I scanned the room and saw that most of them were preparing ingredients for basic pills like recovery pills or energy pills. Only the purple-robed girl and a cold-faced young man in black were attempting a 1st grade high-level pill called a body-tempering pill. After a couple of minutes, everyone except me had their ingredients ready and fires burning under their furnaces. The hall grew hot from all the flames. Their techniques were a bit rough, but their steps were orderly enough. The purple girl and the black-robed young man were already dropping ingredients into their furnaces. The purple girl glanced over at me sitting there doing nothing and laughed, asking if I didn't even know how to start. I told her she should focus on her own work. I was worried that once I started, it would distract her and make her furnace explode. She scoffed and said her body-tempering pill was nearly at the condensing stage. There was no way it would explode. She even taunted me, daring me to make it happen. I told her since she didn't want to succeed, I would grant her wish. To me, refining pills was as easy as drinking water. I lit my furnace. In less than 30 seconds I finished warming it, then smoothly tossed in all the body-tempering pill ingredients in one flowing motion. Less than 2 minutes later, I formed the condensing seal. I opened the furnace and pulled out a perfectly formed body-tempering pill for everyone to see. Under 3 minutes. I actually did it. Every single person at the stone platforms froze solid. They were so shocked they forgot what their own hands were doing. Then, one after another, explosions rang out across the hall. In the blink of an eye, several furnaces blew up, including the purple girl's. She stared at the pill in my hand, then looked at her destroyed furnace, and screamed in disbelief. I looked at the purple girl and told her I warned her that my refining would mess up her concentration, but she didn't listen. Her face turned bright red with embarrassment. She never expected I could actually finish in 3 minutes, and she definitely didn't expect the shock of watching me would make her lose focus and blow up her own furnace at the critical moment. She glanced at the cold-faced young man in black, who hadn't been affected at all and was still calmly working. Her face went pale. This trip to Lingyun City was supposed to be her chance to become Jiang Chen's disciple, and now she had ruined it. A few minutes later, the black-robed young man successfully produced his body-tempering pill. He was the only other person besides me who passed. Jiang Chen quietly nodded, noting the young man had good talent and composure. As for me, Jiang Chen didn't even bother evaluating me the same way. From that one demonstration alone, he already knew everything I said earlier wasn't arrogance. It was the truth. He realized my alchemy skills might be on par with his own, and someone like me was beyond what he could teach. I asked if I could move on to the 2nd grade exam. He said of course, and offered me a private examination room since 2nd grade tests and above were usually done separately to avoid distractions. I waved my hand and said we could just do it right here, no need for the hassle. He placed a set of ingredients in front of me for a 2nd grade beginner pill called the Qi Enhancement Pill. It was easy for me. I finished refining it perfectly in just over 10 minutes. The 2nd grade exam passed just like that. The other young alchemists stared with their eyes nearly popping out. They finally understood I wasn't bragging. I was genuinely that good. Jiang Chen couldn't help but praise me, saying my alchemy talent was the greatest he had ever seen in his life. He asked if I wanted to continue with the third grade exam. I said of course. Then I glanced over at Zhu Mingyuan and told him to take the exam with me this time. He hesitated, reminding me he had already failed earlier today. I smiled confidently and told him not to worry, just come and take the test. With me here, I guaranteed he would become a third-grade alchemist today. My bold claim silenced the entire hall again. Everyone stared at me like I was some kind of freak. They could accept that I was a teenage alchemy genius who could refine first, second, and third-grade pills. That was already insane, but at least believable after what they saw. But now I was saying I could help a second-grade alchemist pass his third-grade exam? They thought that was completely ridiculous. If it were that easy to help someone level up, alchemists wouldn't be so rare. But while everyone doubted me, Zhu Mingyuan was overjoyed. He rushed over and sat down at the stone platform next to mine without hesitation. The other young alchemists couldn't believe he actually trusted me. They thought the whole thing was a joke. Zhu Mingyuan asked Jiang Chen to prepare a third-grade exam for him too. He didn't care what anyone else thought. Since meeting me, he had heard me say outrageous things countless times. And every single time, when people thought I was talking nonsense, I proved them wrong. If I said I could help him become a third-grade alchemist, he wasn't going to be stupid enough to turn that down. Even if he failed again, it was no big deal. But if he succeeded, he would finally achieve his lifelong dream. Jiang Chen's eyes flickered with curiosity. He prepared exam materials for both of us without argument. For Zhu Mingyuan, he chose a third-grade beginner pill called the Restoration Pill. For me, he went straight to a third-grade high-level pill, the Innate Spirit Pill. He clearly wanted to see just how far my abilities could go. Zhu Mingyuan got to work right away, preparing his ingredients and firing up his furnace. I started refining my own pill while keeping an eye on everything Zhu Mingyuan was doing. When he picked up a transparent bamboo stalk called Heavenly Heart Bamboo and was about to drop it in, I spoke up calmly and told him to save the Heavenly Heart Bamboo and Earth Dark Sand for last. He immediately listened, set the bamboo down, and added the other ingredients first instead. Everyone watched in stunned silence as I refined my own high-level pill and guided Zhu Mingyuan through his exam at the same time. Refining pills while coaching someone else, multitasking during alchemy. The whole room had the same thought. Unbelievable. Alchemy is incredibly delicate work. Any alchemist needs to be fully focused, because one small mistake can ruin everything. Yet here I was, refining my own pill while coaching someone else at the same time. Under my guidance, Zhu Mingyuan smoothly added all his ingredients except the Heavenly Heart Bamboo and Earth Dark Sand. But when he hesitated over what to do next, his furnace suddenly became unstable. He started to panic. I calmly told him to take 2/3 of the Heavenly Heart Bamboo and 10 grains of Earth Dark Sand and add them together. He did exactly as I said, and the furnace settled down immediately. Seeing the ingredients melting into liquid form, he got excited and began the condensing stage. A few minutes later, he successfully produced the Restoration Pill. After he finished, I sped up my own work and quickly completed the third-grade high-level Innate Spirit Pill. The young alchemists on the other platforms just stared with blank, numb expressions. They had given up trying to make sense of me. Zhu Mingyuan bowed deeply and thanked me with complete sincerity, treating me like a master. Jiang Chen took a long moment to recover from his shock. He muttered that with talent like mine, the Great Xia Kingdom would soon have a new alchemy grandmaster. He told the 3 of us who passed to follow him to collect our badges. Everyone else was dismissed. The remaining young people, including the purple girl, left the hall looking completely defeated. After receiving my third-grade alchemist badge, I had dinner with Zhu Mingyuan at his invitation, then headed back to the academy. When I got home, one of my servants told me that the mission hall had sent someone by. Apparently, every inner court student had to complete one academy mission per month. It was the academy's way of training students, and completing missions earned a large amount of student points. Those points were needed for everything in the inner court, exchanging for martial techniques or accessing special training areas. I figured I might as well earn some. The next morning, I went to the mission hall. The officer there greeted me warmly, recognizing me as the famous newcomer. He asked what kind of mission I wanted. I told him I wanted one with big rewards. He thought for a moment and mentioned a newly posted 3-star mission worth 100,000 student points. Before he even finished explaining, I told him I would take it. The officer smiled awkwardly and said the mission was mine if I wanted it, but 3-star missions were usually very difficult, and this one had very little information. He suggested I pick a different one. I shook my head and told him I was taking this one. He explained that the mission was to go to Fenghua City and help a family called the Hua family, who were apparently in some kind of trouble. But the details weren't clear. The mission description didn't say what the problem actually was. I didn't waste any time. I left the academy and headed straight for Fenghua City. It was located about 800 li northwest of Lingyun City, within the territory governed by the Lingyun region. Unlike Tsongshan City where I grew up, Fenghua City had always been dominated by a single family, the Hua family. They were the undisputed rulers there for years. But now even they had to ask the Lingyun Academy for help, which meant whatever trouble they were facing wasn't simple. Half a day later, I reached the plains near Fenghua City. Something felt strange. From what I knew, Fenghua City was supposed to be just as prosperous as Tsongshan City. But the roads this close to the city were completely deserted and lifeless. Then I heard a desperate cry for help. I rushed toward the sound and found several armed men surrounding an old man at a bend in the road. The old man was hunched over with a worn cloth bag on his back, holding the hand of a young girl around 15 or 16. She was trembling with fear, her face completely pale. The leader, a big man in black, laughed and told the old man to stop screaming. He bragged that their group, the Heavenly Dragon Fortress, would soon conquer Fenghua City and rule the entire area. He said nobody was coming to save him. Then he told the old man to hand over his granddaughter for their entertainment, and maybe they would spare his life. The girl shook with despair. The old man pulled her behind him and said they would have to step over his dead body before touching a single hair on her head. The black-clothed leader sneered, saying he gave the old man a chance to live, and he threw it away. He thrust his sword at the old man. Just before the blade reached him, a streak of sword energy sliced through the air and cut across the leader's neck. Blood sprayed everywhere, and his head fell to the ground. The sudden death of their leader stunned the remaining fighters. They spun around and saw me standing there, a teenager with cold eyes. One of them, a bald man with a big saber, demanded to know who I was and why I was meddling in Heavenly Dragon Fortress business. I told them coldly that I didn't care if they were from the Heavenly Dragon Fortress or some bug fortress. Bullying defenseless civilians deserved death. I moved like a shadow, weaving between them like a butterfly through flowers. In an instant, they all collapsed to the ground with deep, bloody gashes across their necks. The old man needed a moment to snap out of his shock before dropping to his knees to thank me. The young girl beside him stared at me with a strange look in her eyes. I helped the old man up and told him it was nothing. Then I asked what was going on. Who were these people, and how could they be so bold near Fenghua City? He explained that there was a bandit stronghold called the Heavenly Dragon Fortress on a mountain west of the city. In the past, the Hua family kept them in check. But recently, the fortress leader Xiang Tianlong broke through to the innate realm and even seriously injured the Hua family head. Now the Hua family could barely protect themselves, let alone the common people. That cleared things up. This was the trouble behind my mission. I told the old man that Fenghua City wasn't safe anymore and suggested he take his granddaughter to the Baodin Pavilion in Lingyun City for work, telling them Jiang Chen sent them. Then I rushed toward the city without waiting for a reply. Half an hour later, I reached Fenghua City. From a distance, I could see two groups of armed people facing off at the city gates, the atmosphere tense and hostile. It was obviously the Hua family against the Heavenly Dragon Fortress. I walked straight toward the gate. A middle-aged man leading the fortress side spotted me and shouted, telling me to get lost unless I wanted to die. He said they were conducting business, and a brat like me had no place here. I looked up at him calmly and said I wasn't here to die. I was here to find someone. He snarled that some kid had no right to act tough in front of the Heavenly Dragon Fortress. Then he ordered one of his men to kill me. The moment the middle-aged man gave his order, a huge, muscular fighter called Xiang who charged at me. He swung his saber and roared, bringing it down with a technique called Mountain Breaker. I stood there calmly and watched the blade come at me. Right when it reached my head, I casually reached up and caught it between two fingers, like pinching a leaf. Then I squeezed, and the saber snapped in half. The force sent Xiang Hu flying backward. Without changing my expression, I flicked the broken blade tip with my fingers. It shot through the air and pierced straight through his chest before he could even react. blood sprayed everywhere, and his massive body collapsed to the ground. Both sides were stunned. Xiang, who was a Qi control realm warrior, and I killed him with one effortless move. Among the Hua family's group, I noticed two familiar faces. The middle-aged woman and the purple-robed girl from Lingyun City, the one who tried to whip me on the street and then failed her alchemy exam. The woman pointed at me in surprise and asked the girl if I was the same person from their encounter in Lingyun City. The girl nodded quietly, her expression complicated. It turned out the purple girl was Hua Zilwan, the young lady of the Hua family. Half a month ago, the Heavenly Dragon Fortress leader Xiang Tianlong broke through to the innate realm and attacked the city. Her father, Hua Wujin, nearly died fighting him off. She went to Lingyun City hoping to become Danny Chen's disciple, thinking a fourth-grade alchemist backing could intimidate Xiang Tianlong. When that plan failed, she had no choice but to post a mission at the Lingyun Academy, hoping for help. The middle-aged woman recognized my talent, but worried whether someone so young could really handle an innate realm enemy. The leader of the Heavenly Dragon group snapped out of his shock and screamed at me, calling me a bastard for killing one of their people. I looked at him calmly and said I killed him and there was nothing he could do about it. I came here today specifically to deal with the Heavenly Dragon Fortress. The middle-aged man, Xiang Tianxiong, laughed in fury and promised to show me what happened to people who crossed the Heavenly Dragon Fortress. He ordered his 4 golden dragon guards to get into formation. The 4 men in golden robes rushed out and surrounded me from 4 directions, then attacked together in perfect coordination. I moved like a shadow and unleashed a barrage of punches, turning the air into a storm of fist strikes. In the blink of an eye, all 4 of them took multiple hits and were sent flying through the air, crashing to the ground meters away. Then someone behind me called out a warning, saying these 4 guards practiced a secret technique that gave them incredible defense and recovery when they fought together. Even a 9th-level Qi control warrior couldn't handle them. Sure enough, golden light erupted from their bodies, and moments later all 4 stood up completely unharmed. Xiang Tianxiong laughed triumphantly and said only an innate realm expert could defeat them. Otherwise, I was dead for sure. I was briefly surprised, but I quickly figured out what was going on. I sneered and told him their so-called secret technique was nothing but a basic combined formation attack. Did he really think these 4 could stop me? I told him to watch carefully. I would finish them with one sword. I drew my flame dragon sword and unleashed my sword intent. I swung 4 times in rapid succession. 4 streaks of sharp sword energy shattered the golden light protecting each of them and sliced their bodies clean in half. Everyone on both sides stood frozen with shock. Hua Zilwan stared blankly and asked the middle-aged woman, her Aunt Lan, how I could possibly be this strong. Was I an innate realm expert? She already knew I was a genuine 3rd-grade alchemist, and my alchemy talent was insane enough. She never imagined my martial talent was equally terrifying. Aunt Lan said she wasn't sure about my realm, but the sword energy I used contained an indescribable power. If she wasn't mistaken, it was the legendary sword intent. She stared at me in disbelief, realizing I was an extraordinary genius who had actually comprehended sword intent. Hua Zilwan gasped when she heard the words, sword intent. She knew what it meant. It was one of the legendary martial truths. Out of 10,000 warriors, maybe not even one could ever comprehend it. She had no words left to describe how monstrous I was. Aunt Lan smiled with relief and said that with me here, the Hua family should be able to survive this crisis. Since I had comprehended sword intent, even if I wasn't at the innate realm, I still had the power to fight Xiang Tianlong head-on. Xiang Tianxiong finally recovered from his shock and demanded to know who I was. The 4 golden dragon guards were the strongest force in their fortress after their leader, and I had just wiped them out effortlessly. I told him he wasn't worthy of knowing who I was. I said I didn't feel like going on a killing spree today, so he should take his people and get lost. I also told him to deliver a message to Xiang Tianlong. Come see me in Fenghua City within 3 days, or face the consequences. That set him off. He started ranting about how the Heavenly Dragon Fortress wasn't afraid of me. But before he could finish his sentence, I appeared above his head in a flash and stomped him into the ground. He crashed face first and coughed up blood. I looked down at him coldly and told him to stop talking so much. If he didn't want to die, he should leave now and tell Xiang Tianlong to come within 3 days. Otherwise, I would personally flatten their entire fortress. He scrambled to his feet in terror, and without a moment's hesitation, fled from Fenghua City with whatever men he had left. After they were gone, Huazilwan walked up to me with her people. She called me Master Jiang and thanked me for coming to help. She apologized for being rude to me in Lingyun City the day before, saying she had been reckless. I smiled and told her I hadn't taken it to heart at all. I accepted the mission to help the Hua family, so dealing with the Heavenly Dragon Fortress was simply my job. She thanked me deeply again, then said she had one more request she desperately needed me to agree to. Then she dropped to her knees in front of me. I waved my hand, and a gentle force lifted Huazilwan back to her feet. Antlan stepped forward and told Zilwan not to trouble me. She said that while my martial talent was extraordinary, her father's problem couldn't be solved through fighting ability alone. But Zilwan shook her head and insisted she believed I could save her father. She begged me to help, saying she would agree to any condition. She knew something others didn't. She had seen my alchemy skills at the guild yesterday. Even Jiang Chen had been impressed by me. She had a feeling that if anyone in this world could save her father, it was me. I smiled lightly and told her she should at least let me see her father first. She was overjoyed and quickly led me into the city. Half an hour later, we arrived at the room where her father, Hua Wujing, the Hua family head, was resting. I scanned the room and saw a middle-aged man in red robes lying pale and unconscious on the bed. Beside the bed lay a red tiger about 2 or 3 meters tall. With my 4th-grade beast tamer knowledge, I recognized it immediately as a 2nd-grade high-level flame tiger. But its life force was dangerously weak, like it could die at any moment. An old man in beast tamer robes was sweating heavily as he tried to treat the tiger. I frowned when I understood the situation. It was a life-sharing contract. Zilwan confirmed it. Her father had signed this equal contract with the flame tiger. Half a month ago, the two of them fought together to drive back Xiang Tianlong, buying the Hua family precious time. But the tiger was critically wounded in that battle, and because of the contract, her father's life force was constantly draining to keep the tiger alive. If nothing changed, both of them would die. The old beast tamer shook his head sadly and told Zilwan he had done everything he could. He said even if she brought the best 6th-grade beast tamer in the entire Great Xia Kingdom, it would be hopeless. The tiger's injuries were beyond saving. Zilwan's face went deathly pale hearing those words. That was when I spoke up. I scoffed and asked who told him the flame tiger's injuries were beyond saving. If he couldn't heal it, that only meant his skills weren't good enough. My cold remark stunned the old beast tamer. He turned to look at me with an unpleasant expression and asked if I was really questioning his judgment. I told him that was exactly what I was doing. The flame tiger could clearly be saved, yet he insisted it was hopeless. That was the definition of lacking skill. He got angry and called me a brat who had no right to talk big. He said the tiger was only alive because of the life-sharing contract, and its death was a certainty. I pointed out that if it still had a breath of life left, why couldn't it be saved? He snorted and told me to stop talking nonsense about beast taming if I didn't understand it. He said with absolute confidence that the tiger was doomed, and even the greatest beast tamer in the world couldn't change that. I smiled and told him it was just a 2nd-grade flame tiger. I could handle it myself without needing anyone else. He looked me up and down like he had just heard the funniest joke of his life. He was a 3rd-grade beast tamer and couldn't do it, so what could some kid possibly accomplish? Zilwan, on the other hand, looked at me with excitement and asked if I could really save the tiger. The old man warned her not to believe me, saying I was just an ignorant boy who might make things worse and put her father in real danger. I laughed at his logic. The tiger and her father shared their lives through the contract. If he was saying the tiger was beyond saving, that was the same as saying her father was doomed too. So what further danger could there possibly be? I told him he was clearly going senile. He turned red with anger and told me to prove it instead of just talking. He swore that if I actually healed the flame tiger, he would kneel and call me master. I grinned and told him he would definitely be making that call. With me here, this flame tiger couldn't die even if it wanted to. I focused my eyes on the tiger. My system triggered instantly. By observing the critically injured beast, I activated my 100-fold comprehension and immediately understood exactly how to treat it. I walked over to the desk, grabbed a pen, and quickly wrote down about 10 ingredients. I handed the list to Zilwan and asked her to have someone boil these materials over high heat for 15 minutes. then bring me the resulting liquid. Zilwan didn't hesitate for a second. She grabbed the list and had people start preparing immediately. Meanwhile, the old beast tamer, whose name was Lu Yuanhua, watched me with a mocking smile. He was a well-established third-grade beast tamer who had examined the flame tiger more than 10 times and tried every method he knew. Nothing worked. He wanted to see what tricks I could pull. About half an hour later, Zilwan's servants carried in 2 large buckets of the boiled medicinal liquid. Lu Yuanhua sneered and asked if I seriously planned to use that liquid to save the tiger. I asked him what the problem was. He laughed and called me clueless. He said the flame tiger had already lost all bodily functions and was only hanging on through the life-sharing contract. Even if my liquid was some kind of miracle cure, the tiger's body couldn't absorb anything. I smiled and told him I already knew that. If the tiger could absorb medicine on its own, what would it need a beast tamer for? I pointed my hands at the 2 buckets and levitated them into the air, 3 meters above the tiger's head. The liquid began pouring down over the tiger. At the same time, my hands moved rapidly, forming 12 mysterious hand seals one after another, each one shooting into the tiger's vital acupoints. Then something incredible happened. When the liquid touched the tiger's body, it didn't just run off like water. Guided by my 12 seals, the liquid was absorbed directly into the tiger's body. Lu Yuanhua's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. After a moment, something clicked in his mind. He remembered once seeing an ancient text about beast taming that described techniques from ancient times. What I was doing matched those descriptions. He stammered in shock, asking if this was the legendary ancient beast control art. I told him he had some knowledge after all. What I was using was the spirit elevation chapter of the ancient beast control art. I announced that I was going to use this technique to not only save the flame tiger, but push it past its breaking point and advance it to a third-grade beast. The 2 buckets of liquid were fully absorbed. Without any hesitation, I pressed my hands together. All 12 seals that had been circling the tiger's body instantly sank into it. After my 12 seals sank into the flame tiger's body, its life force started recovering at a visible speed. I clapped my hands and told Zilwan that I had used the ancient beast control art to slowly restore the tiger's vitality and fully awaken its hidden potential. Within half a month at most, it would break through its limits and advance to a third-grade beast. When that happened, both the tiger and her father would wake up. Zilwan was overwhelmed with emotion and kept thanking me. She had honestly only asked for my help as a last desperate hope, never expecting I could solve it so easily. I told her it was nothing. Then I turned to Lu Yuanhua and asked if he was convinced now. He dropped to his knees immediately. He said my mastery of the ancient beast control art far surpassed his own abilities, and he admitted he had been blind to my true skill. He begged forgiveness and said he wanted to follow me for life as my student. He felt my beast taming abilities even exceeded those of his own former master. To him, serving someone who possessed the legendary ancient beast control art would be a dream come true for any beast tamer. Zilwan stood there with a numb expression. She couldn't believe that on top of my insane talent in alchemy and martial arts, I was equally terrifying in beast taming. In just a short time, I had completely won over a proud third-grade beast tamer. I told Lu Yuanhua there was no need to follow me. The world was vast and full of hidden experts. I just hoped he would stop looking down on people in the future. Then I walked out. With Zilwan's father taken care of, I stayed at the Hua family residence and waited for Xiang Tianlong to show up. 3 days passed, but he never came. On the morning of the 4th day, I decided to go to him instead. I wanted to finish this mission quickly and get back to the academy. Zilwan tried to stop me and offered to send Hua family fighters with me, but I refused everything. I headed west from Fenghua City straight toward Heavenly Dragon Mountain. An hour later, I arrived at its base. I looked up at the steep, towering peak that shot into the clouds like it had been carved with a giant blade. Without hesitation, I started climbing the narrow, dangerous mountain path. I moved fast as lightning, treating the treacherous trail like flat ground. In about 10 minutes, I reached a checkpoint the Heavenly Dragon Fortress had set up halfway up the mountain. The guards there glared at me and shouted that outsiders were forbidden on Heavenly Dragon Mountain. They told me to get lost. I looked up at the guards and told them calmly that I was here to settle things with their leader, Xiang Tianlong. They flew into a rage, calling me a brat who was looking for death. They jumped down from the checkpoint and charged at me with their weapons. A series of thuds echoed through the air. Before they could even scream, I sent them all flying off the edge of the cliff. I continued up the steep mountain path. The Heavenly Dragon Fortress had extremely tight security, with checkpoints every 500 meters. But none of them were any threat to me. In no time at all, I smashed through 3 checkpoints and reached an open area halfway up the mountain. I looked up and saw their main fortress, a massive stronghold nearly 10 meters high, built against the mountainside with huge stone walls that made it look like an impenetrable fortress. A thick-browed man on top of the wall shouted down at me, demanding to know who I was and why I was causing trouble. I told him I wasn't here to cause trouble. I just wanted to settle a score with Xiang Tianlong. I said he should go tell his boss to come out and face death. He snarled that I was just some kid who dared to come alone to their fortress. He warned me to leave immediately or die. With a wave of his hand, countless heads popped up along the wall, all of them drawing bows and pointing arrows straight at me. Just as things were getting tense, I heard the sound of people rushing through the air behind me. 3 figures were approaching fast. I caught pieces of their conversation. One of them called their leader Nangong, saying someone had gotten here first, but they weren't too late. Another voice, cold and arrogant, declared that Xiang Tianlong's head belonged to him and nobody should dare compete for it. A third person said that with Xiang Tianlong's head, this Nangong could earn a heaven spirit pill, break through to the innate realm, and shine at the upcoming 9 Academies tournament. I turned to look and saw 3 people rushing toward the fortress gate. The one in front was a handsome young man with an elegant, refined air about him. He walked right up to me and spoke in an extremely domineering tone. He announced that Xiang Tianlong's head was his, and nobody was allowed to take it from him. I glanced at the 3 newcomers and noticed they were all wearing purple robes with the words, "Purple Cloud," embroidered on their chests. I guessed immediately they were students from the Purple Cloud Academy, one of the 9 academies in the Great Xia Kingdom. The Purple Cloud Academy was located west of Lingyun, almost bordering Fenghua City, so their presence here wasn't surprising. One of them, a girl with a haughty attitude, confirmed they were from the Purple Cloud Academy. She boasted that their leader, Nangong Yi, was ranked in the top 3 on their academy's rankings. She looked down at me and guessed from my clothes that I was from the Lingyun Academy, the lowest-ranked academy among the 9. She mocked me for coming to Heavenly Dragon Mountain alone, calling it suicidal. The other one, a young man carrying a saber on his back, laughed and asked if my instructors hadn't told me that Xiang Tianlong was a 9th-level Qi control warrior. He told me to hand over the mission and go back where I came from if I didn't want to die. I didn't care about their insults. I looked at Nangong Yi with a strange smile and asked if he really wanted me to give up Xiang Tianlong's head. He declared arrogantly that first, nobody from the Lingyun Academy except Wu Feilong could kill Xiang Tianlong, so he was doing me a favor. Second, whether I agreed or not, the head was his, and he would kill anyone who got in his way. I laughed to myself. These 3 had no idea that Xiang Tianlong had already broken through to the innate realm. I wanted to see how tough they would act after meeting the real Xiang Tianlong. So I told them casually that I only came here to deal with a small problem, not specifically for Xiang Tianlong's head. Since they wanted it so badly, they could have it. The girl shot me a smug look, calling me smart for backing off. Then the 3 of them headed straight toward the fortress gate. The thick-browed man on the wall ordered his archers to fire. A rain of arrows flew at Nangong Yi and his group. Nangong Yi's expression turned cold. He swept his hand through the air, and a phantom hand made of energy caught every single arrow. Then he flung them all back at the wall. Screams erupted from the defenders as the arrows struck home. Nangong Yi wiped out all the archers on the wall with a single casual strike. Only the thick-browed man was left standing up there, trembling with fear. Nangong Yi announced his name coldly and said he came for Xiang Tianlong's head. Then he punched the fortress gate and shattered it completely. Just as he was about to walk in, a cold voice came from inside. A burly man in black robes stepped out with a group of warriors behind him. He had thick brows, fierce eyes, and a wild, powerful aura radiating from his body. This was Xiang Tianlong. Nangong Yi drew his sword and pointed it at him, asking whether Xiang Tianlong wanted to kill himself or have it done for him. Xiang Tianlong laughed savagely and pulled out a massive golden saber. He swung it, and a blade of energy shot toward Nangong Yi like lightning. The moment that attack came out, Nangong Yi's calm expression shattered. He screamed that it was innate level saber energy. Xiang Tianlong was an innate realm expert. He hadn't known. Panic flooded his face, and he immediately jumped backward to dodge. But as he retreated, he did something disgusting. He grabbed his two companions by the shoulders and shoved them forward into the path of the attack. The two Purple Cloud Academy students didn't even have time to react before the saber energy cut them both in half. He used his own teammates as human shields to save himself. Then he rushed over to my side and begged me to join forces with him. He said Xiang Tianlong had broken through to the innate realm, and the only way either of us could survive was by fighting together. I looked at him with pure contempt. Team up with him? So he could stab me in the back the moment it was convenient? A so-called top-ranked genius from the Purple Cloud Academy, sacrificing his own companions just to stay alive. I told him he was trash and I would never lower myself to work with someone like him. Then I turned to Xiang Tianlong and called out calmly. I told him to deal with this piece of garbage first. Once he was done with Nangong Yi, I would settle my own business with him. Xiang Tianlong snarled that none of us would leave alive. He swung his golden saber and sent another blast of innate level energy sweeping toward both me and Nangong Yi. Nangong Yi's face turned white. He unleashed his strongest technique, a mystic rank sword skill called Heavenly Moon Slash, and collided head-on with the saber energy. His attack shattered instantly. He coughed up blood and was sent flying like a broken kite. He scrambled to his feet and ran straight for the mountain path without looking back. As he fled, his voice echoed back, swearing he would return to take Xiang Tianlong's head someday. Xiang Tianlong snorted at how fast he ran, then turned his attention to me. His eyes narrowed when he noticed I was still standing in the exact same spot, completely unaffected by his earlier attack. He asked if I wasn't with that guy. I smiled and said I wasn't, but my purpose was the same. He scoffed and asked what made me think I could kill him when a 9th-level chi control genius had just failed. He didn't believe someone who looked even younger could be an innate realm expert. I told him calmly that just because Nangong Yi couldn't kill him didn't mean I couldn't. I reminded him that 3 days ago, I sent a message telling him to come to Fenghua City. He wasted his chance. Now I was here to keep my promise and flatten his fortress. His face changed when he realized who I was, the one who helped the Hua family. He glared at me intensely. I told him flatly to disband the Heavenly Dragon Fortress and cripple his own cultivation. If he did that, I might consider sparing his life. He roared that I shouldn't be arrogant in front of him. He knew I had comprehended sword intent, but as long as I wasn't a true innate realm expert, he wasn't afraid. He gripped his golden saber with both hands and unleashed a 3-meter-long blade of light that tore through the air toward me like lightning. I smiled coldly and told him it was his unlucky day. Because I hadn't just comprehended sword intent, I had also broken through to the innate realm. My innate aura and first-level sword intent erupted from my body at the same time. My innate aura and sword intent exploded at the same time. I swung my sword at Xiang Tianlong. The moment the blade of light appeared, he looked like he had been completely locked in place by it. Terror spread across his face. My strike was far too powerful for him. Even if he had been at full strength, he couldn't have blocked it, let alone now, when he still hadn't recovered from his fight with Hua Wujin half a month ago. My sword light sliced through his saber energy like cutting through tofu, then pierced straight through his chest. He stared at me with unwilling eyes, then toppled over and hit the ground. Dead. One move. That was all it took to kill the leader of the Heavenly Dragon Fortress, an innate realm expert. Every warrior in the fortress froze in shock. When they finally came to their senses and met my gaze, they were shaking with terror. Dozens of them threw down their weapons and dropped to their knees, begging for mercy. They promised to disband the fortress and leave the mountain immediately. I told them coldly to get lost. If I ever caught them robbing and killing again, I wouldn't show any mercy. They thanked me frantically and scrambled down the mountain. But as the crowd fled, I spotted a familiar face trying to sneak away, Xiang Tianxiu. I grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him out of the group. He turned white and screamed for his life, offering to tell me a secret about the fortress. He said deep inside the fortress there was a cave left behind by a powerful expert. His brother Xiang Tianlong had found pills in there that helped him break through to the innate realm. More importantly, on one of the cave walls, That expert had left behind an Earth-grade martial technique. I nodded. An Earth-grade technique was indeed a decent secret, but I told him that even so, I had no intention of letting him live. Before he could finish screaming, no, my flame dragon sword swept across his neck, and he became a cold corpse. I rushed into the depths of the fortress and quickly found the cave. The moment I stepped inside, my eyes were drawn to a pattern carved on the stone wall. My system activated instantly. By observing the incomplete Earth-grade technique called the Heaven-Burning Sword Art, I triggered my hundredfold comprehension and learned the complete version. I was very happy with the Heaven-Burning Sword Art. Ever since I comprehended sword intent at the Swordmark Hall, I had been lacking a proper sword technique to go with it. I had figured out a basic yellow-grade sword skill on my own through practice, but upgrading it to an Earth-grade technique would have taken time. This new technique filled that gap perfectly. After checking the rest of the cave and finding nothing else of value, I left Heavenly Dragon Mountain and headed back to Fenghua City. When Zilwan and the others heard that I had killed Xiang Tianlong and destroyed the entire fortress in less than half a day, they were speechless. The Heavenly Dragon Fortress had nearly crushed their family, and I had wiped it out like it was nothing. With the mission complete, I didn't stay long. The next morning, I said goodbye to Zilwan and her people and left Fenghua City. When I got back to the Lingyun Academy and walked into my courtyard, a servant hurried over and told me someone had been waiting for me in the guest hall since early morning. I was puzzled. I didn't know many people, so I couldn't imagine who would come looking for me. I walked into the guest hall and saw a familiar, beautiful figure, Su Lingxiang, the instructor from the academy. I asked her why she was here. She looked up at me with happy eyes, relieved that I was back. I told her I had just returned from completing a mission in Fenghua City and asked if her master, old brother Yan Qingxian, had sent her. She got a little awkward when I called her instructor, while also calling her master, brother. She asked me to just use her name. I smiled and said I would call her sister Lingxiang instead. She didn't argue with that. Then she looked a bit embarrassed and explained that she wasn't here on her master's orders. She had come on her own because she needed my help with something. I was surprised. She was a genuine third-grade alchemist and the disciple of the great sixth-grade master, Yan Qingxian. Most people in this world could only look up to her. I couldn't imagine what she would need my help with. She said it was a long story and pulled me by the arm, saying we should talk while walking to Qingxian residence. But the moment we stepped out of my courtyard, a thunderous, cold voice boomed in our ears. Someone shouted that I had finally returned, and they had been waiting for me for a very long time. The sudden shout startled me. I looked over and saw a tall young man, about 18 or 19, jump down from a nearby tree. He landed like a meteor, cracking the stone ground in a several-meter radius around him. I narrowed my eyes. This guy was strong, definitely stronger than Xiang Tianlong. In this entire academy, only one student could have that kind of power, Wu Failong, ranked number 1 on the Lingyun rankings. He confirmed it. He looked at me calmly and asked if I was the one who killed his little brother's black cloud python with a single punch. I raised an eyebrow and said yes, then asked if he was here to get revenge for his brother. He said, of course. You don't hit a dog without considering its owner, and I had messed with his brother. He told me to hand over my 6th-grade fire scale beast cub as compensation, and he would pretend nothing happened. A crowd of students quickly gathered to watch. Su Lingxiang stepped forward with an icy expression and told Wu Failong she was here on her master's orders to bring me to Qingxian residence. She warned him to move aside if he knew what was good for him. Wu Failong's face shifted slightly. Qingxian residence belonged to the 6th-grade alchemy master Yan Qingxian. If Yan Qingxian wanted to see me, blocking me would mean offending someone far beyond his reach. He gritted his teeth and said I was lucky today, and he would settle things another time. But as he turned to leave, I spoke up. I told him he couldn't just show up whenever he liked and walk away whenever he pleased. That was disrespecting me. Lingxiang looked at me like I was crazy for stopping him. I smiled and told her to wait a moment. I would deal with this guy first, and then go with her to Qingxian residence. Wu Failong laughed loudly and said he had heard I was arrogant, and now he finally saw it for himself. He looked at me with contempt and asked what I could possibly do to him. I looked at him calmly and held up 5 fingers. Then I let my voice ring out for everyone to hear. 5 minutes was all I needed to finish him. The crowd erupted when I held up 5 fingers. They couldn't believe I said I would finish off Wu Failong in 5 minutes. He had dominated the top spot on the Lingyun rankings for 3 full years, and nobody had come close to challenging him. Even worse, he had recently broken through to the innate realm. His combat power was said to rival fighters at the 2nd or even 3rd level of innate. People thought that even with my sword intent, beating him in 5 minutes was pure fantasy. Wu Failong laughed like he had just heard the funniest joke of his life. He declared that if I could touch a single hair on his head within 5 minutes, he would kneel before me and admit defeat on the spot. I told him that in my eyes, the so-called number 1 on the Lingyun rankings was the real joke. 5 minutes was actually more time than I needed. I activated my sky-treading steps and appeared above his head in an instant. He roared, and his entire body radiated an overwhelmingly domineering aura. He clenched his fist, and a phantom fist shadow formed, slamming toward me with terrifying force. Our attacks collided with a thunderous boom, and I was knocked back several meters. I steadied myself and looked at him with narrowed eyes. He had comprehended fist intent. He grinned proudly and told me I wasn't the only one in this world who could grasp martial truth. He challenged me to bring out my sword intent so he could see whether my sword intent or his fist intent was stronger. The crowd was stunned. With innate level strength plus fist intent, Wu Failong could probably beat even 3rd level innate fighters. Everyone started looking at me with pity, thinking I had gone too far with my boasting this time. But I smiled and let my voice ring out again. I told Wu Failong that he had only scratched the surface of fist intent. He had no right to show off in front of me. And besides, to beat him, I didn't even need to use my sword intent. The moment I said I didn't need sword intent to beat him, everything went silent. Everyone looked at me like I was an idiot. They figured Wu Failong had scared me senseless. Even if I had sword intent, Wu Failong had fist intent and was a full realm above me. Not using sword intent against him sounded like a death wish. Even Ling Xiang, who knew how talented I was, thought I was going too far this time. She admitted I was a genius who could fight above my level, but Wu Failong wasn't just any innate expert. He was the top-ranked genius who had comprehended fist intent. Wu Failong laughed and said I was arrogant beyond limits. He declared that even with my sword intent, I couldn't touch him. He threw a devastating punch infused with both innate energy and fist intent, a strike powerful enough to seriously injure any ordinary 2nd-level innate warrior. I watched it come with a calm expression. I drew my flame dragon sword and poured a continuous stream of innate true energy into it. A blazing red sword light shot into the sky. The temperature around us spiked instantly, and the spiritual energy in the air began churning wildly. The surrounding energy rushed toward the blade and condensed into a massive flaming sword, 3 meters long, hovering in the air above me. I shouted, "Heaven-burning sword art, cut!" and swung my blade down. The enormous flame sword tore through Wu Failong's fist energy like it was nothing and slammed into his body. He screamed, coughed up blood, and was sent flying several meters before crashing to the ground. His clothes were completely shredded and his entire body reeked of scorched flesh. He struggled to push himself up and stared at me with terror in his eyes. He gasped that my technique had drawn on the power of heaven and earth, meaning I possessed an earth-grade martial technique. Then another mouthful of blood burst from his throat, his head dropped to the side, and he passed out cold on the ground. The crowd was completely stunned. Nobody expected me to have an earth-grade technique as a hidden weapon on top of my sword intent, and nobody imagined I would actually defeat Wu Failong within 5 minutes. The number 1 genius who had ruled the Lingyun rankings for 3 years couldn't even last 5 minutes against me. People started talking about how terrifying my growth had been. I entered the academy just a month or 2 ago as a bronze student who got in through the back door. Since then, I defeated the top gold student, made the genius beauty Meng Qingxue my maidservant, broke a 30-year tower record, beat the 3rd-ranked Lin Yu on my first day in the inner court, and now I had crushed Wu Failong himself. I had become the undisputed number 1 student in the academy's entire history. I put away my flame dragon sword and walked over to Ling Xiang, telling her we could go now. She stared at me for a long moment before calling me a freak. She finally understood why I insisted on cultivating both martial arts and alchemy at the same time. With my monstrous talent, it was nothing to me. Just then, a cheerful male voice called out Ling Xiang's name. I looked up and saw a handsome young man around 24 or 25 walking toward us wearing alchemist robes. On his chest hung a silver badge with 4 stars. He was a 4th-grade alchemist. The crowd gasped at how young he was to have reached that level. Ling Xiang's expression changed. She whispered to me that this was Dan Xioming from the Dan family, the top alchemy clan in the Great Xia Kingdom. Ever since her master took her to visit their family, this guy had been following her around. He even chased her all the way to the Lingyun Academy. She said the real reason she came to find me was to help her get rid of this annoying pest. I smiled and told her so she just needed a bodyguard. I grabbed her hand and said we should leave and ignore him. Dan Xioming's face darkened instantly. He shouted at me to let go of her with my dirty hands and demanded to know what my relationship with Ling Xiang was. I glanced at him casually and asked who he even was. Whatever my relationship with Ling Xiang was, it was none of his business. Everyone was impressed that I didn't back down from a 4th-grade alchemist. In the Great Xia Kingdom, even innate experts and Kaiyuan realm powerhouses had to treat 4th-grade alchemists with respect. People couldn't figure out where I got the nerve to talk to one like that. Dan Xioming glared at me coldly and asked who gave me the guts to speak to a 4th-grade alchemist that way. I smiled contemptuously and asked if being a 4th-grade alchemist was really that impressive. Everyone around us was speechless. A 4th-grade alchemist held an incredibly high status in the kingdom, and here I was saying it was no big deal. Dan Xioming was nearly exploding with anger. He turned to Ling Xiang and asked if I was the man she liked. Ling Xiang said yes without hesitation. She told him I was the person she liked, and that my alchemy talent was no less than his. She told him to stop bothering her from now on. He laughed in disbelief and asked if she had a fever. She said she was perfectly clear-headed. Then she proposed a challenge. If he could beat me in an alchemy contest, she would accept whatever he decided. But if he lost, he had to disappear from her life forever. The crowd was shocked. They never imagined Ling Xiang would have me compete in alchemy against a 4th-grade alchemist. They all knew my martial talent was incredible, but could I actually refine pills? Even if I could, going up against a 4th-grade alchemist seemed like asking to be crushed. Dan Xioming agreed eagerly and looked at me with contempt. He taunted me, saying I should put my money where my mouth was since I claimed 4th-grade alchemists were nothing special. I told him I was simply stating facts. He laughed and asked what right someone without even a ranking had to say such things. I raised an eyebrow and asked who told him I had no ranking. I said I went to the Alchemy Guild a couple days ago and picked up a badge just for fun. Unfortunately, the Lingyun City Guild could only test up to 3rd grade. Then I pulled out my 3-star alchemist badge. The moment everyone saw it, Dan Xioming's laughter stopped dead. The entire crowd stared with wide eyes. They couldn't believe it. I was actually a real alchemist, and a 3rd-grade one at that. The crowd erupted with amazement. They already couldn't believe I was the top student at the academy, and now they found out I was a 3rd-grade alchemist too. From what I said, it was clear I could probably pass the 4th-grade exam. Lingyun City's guild just didn't have the authority to test that high. Even at 3rd grade, being this young and already at that level was enough to overshadow a young 4th-grade alchemist like Dan Xioming. Dan Xioming stared at my badge in disbelief and screamed that it had to be fake. A 15-year-old 3rd-grade alchemist was unheard of. Most people at my age had barely started learning alchemy. Even in his prestigious Dan family, no one this monstrous had ever appeared. I told him that if he could become a 4th-grade alchemist, there was no reason I couldn't be 3rd grade. I said to cut the nonsense. If he wanted to compete, then let's compete. When he lost, he should get lost and stop embarrassing himself in front of me. He laughed angrily and asked how I wanted to do this. Even if I really was 3rd grade, he was confident a 4th-grade genius from the Dan family could handle some kid. I told him he could pick the topic himself, so that when he lost, he would have no excuses. That nearly made his head explode. But before he could say anything, Ling Xiang cut in with her cool voice. She said that to keep things fair, she would set the rules. Dan Xioming agreed, glaring at me with cold eyes and promising to show me how big the gap between us was. I didn't even bother looking at him and just told Ling Xiang to go ahead. She pulled out a pill formula from her storage ring. She explained that this was the Green Spirit Transformation Pill, a 3rd-grade high-level formula newly developed by her master. Only she and her master knew it. She would erase 3 ingredients from the formula and show us the incomplete version. Whoever correctly identified the 3 missing ingredients first would be the winner. She asked if we both agreed to these terms. Dan Xiaoming had no objections to the challenge. As a genius from the top alchemy family in the kingdom, he was confident his deep knowledge and high comprehension would make beating me effortless. I smiled to myself when I heard Lingxiang's challenge. The last time I was at Qingxian residence, she had already seen my ability to instantly complete incomplete formulas. By taking control of the rules, she wasn't being fair. She was openly helping me cheat. Once we both agreed, Lingxiang opened the formula, covered up 3 ingredients, and showed us the incomplete version. I glanced at it casually. My system triggered instantly. One look, and I had the complete green spirit transformation pill formula in my head. I crossed my arms and watched Dan Xiaoming staring at the formula, thinking hard. Then I spoke up in a mocking tone. I told him his comprehension was really terrible. He had been staring at the thing for ages already. Could he figure out the 3 missing ingredients or not? If he couldn't, he should just admit defeat and get lost instead of wasting everyone's time. The entire crowd was stunned. From the moment Lingxiang showed us the formula to now, barely 10 seconds had passed. Had I really completed the formula in under 10 seconds? Dan Xiaoming glanced at me with a cold laugh. Completing a formula was an extremely complex process. Even for him, figuring out the 3 missing ingredients required careful analysis and multiple rounds of reasoning. He refused to believe I had done it in 10 seconds. I told him it was just a 3rd-grade formula with only 3 ingredients missing. What was so hard about that? If he couldn't do it, that just meant his comprehension was too weak. Then I named the 3 missing ingredients: green sun vine, return origin leaf, and willow ginseng. I turned to Lingxiang with a smile and asked if I was correct. She revealed the hidden ingredients to everyone. They were exactly what I said: green sun vine, return origin leaf, and willow ginseng. 10 seconds. I had perfectly answered the challenge in under 10 seconds. Everyone stared at me like I was a monster. A 4th-grade alchemist had just been completely crushed in an alchemy contest. People were saying my talent in alchemy was even scarier than my martial arts talent. Dan Xiaoming stared blankly for a long moment before his face twisted with rage. He screamed that it was impossible and accused us of cheating, claiming I must have seen the complete formula beforehand. Lingxiang's eyebrows shot up in anger. She told him not to make baseless accusations. I had never seen the formula before. He sneered and asked if we thought he was stupid. How could anyone complete a formula in under 10 seconds without having seen it in advance? Lingxiang was shaking with fury. She asked if a 4th-grade alchemist was really such a sore loser. He insisted that the only reason he lost was because we conspired together. Then he glared at me and demanded a real, straightforward alchemy competition. I looked at him with open contempt and said I had never seen anyone as shameless as him. He lost because he wasn't good enough, and he still had the nerve to cry about cheating. He told me to stop talking and fight him for real if I was a man. I told him he didn't need to use such pathetic tactics to provoke me. I asked what he had in mind. He said it was simple. He had 5 sets of ingredients for a 4th-grade return origin pill. Whoever refined one first would win. He asked if I dared. I asked if he really wanted to compete in refining 4th-grade pills. He threw my own words back at me, reminding me I said 4th-grade alchemists were nothing special. If that was true, I should have no problem refining a 4th-grade pill. I smiled and agreed. But I added a condition. When I won, all the pills he refined would be mine. He snorted and said if I had the ability to win, he didn't care. I grinned and told him that beating him was effortless. I already crushed him once, and doing it again would be just as easy. Since he was begging for another beating, I was happy to give him one. He laughed angrily, insisting the first round was rigged and swearing the next one would prove who was really superior. Then he waved his hand, and 5 sets of pill ingredients appeared in front of him. Dan Xiaoming laid out 5 sets of return origin pill ingredients and told me to stop talking and start. He was confident this time. As a genius from the Dan family, he had been a 4th-grade alchemist for a while and had successfully refined the return origin pill many times before. I was only a 3rd-grade alchemist who hadn't even taken the 4th-grade exam yet. He was sure experience would give him the edge. I smiled and told him since he was so eager to be crushed, I would grant his wish. I pulled out a pill furnace and sat down across from him. We both started heating our furnaces at almost the same time. About 2 minutes later, I was already dropping ingredients into my furnace while he was still warming his. He sneered and said speed was useless. Fourth-grade pills weren't that easy to refine. He believed I was rushing to my own failure. He spent a careful 5 minutes on warming alone, then began methodically adding his ingredients. But when he was only halfway through adding his materials, a rich medicinal fragrance drifted into his nose. The crowd exploded with shock. People were screaming that I had already finished refining my pill, while the fourth-grade alchemist across from me was only halfway done. Dan Xiaoming's body went completely stiff. He looked up and saw me pulling a gleaming golden return origin pill from my furnace. His face turned deathly white, and at that exact moment, his own furnace exploded from his loss of concentration. I didn't pay him any attention. I put the pill away and immediately started on the second batch, then the third, then the fourth. I refined all 4 remaining sets of ingredients one after another, producing a perfect return origin pill every single time. With 4 pills sitting in front of me, I looked up at Dan Xiaoming and asked him one simple question. This time, did he accept his defeat or not? Everyone looked at him with pity. This wasn't a competition. It was a complete demolition from start to finish. The whole crowd of Lingyun students looked at me with deep admiration. They called me a freak and said even a genius from the Dan family got crushed to pieces by me. Dan Xiaoming's face turned bright red with humiliation. He couldn't stand being there a second longer and slunk away without a word. After defeating Wu Feilong and getting rid of Dan Xiaoming for Lingxiang, I finally got to enjoy some peaceful days at the academy. But the calm didn't last long. One day while I was meditating in my room, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in my courtyard. I recognized it, Elder Yin Songming. I went outside to meet him and asked why he was here. He said he came to get me for a fight. Students from the Tsanglei Academy had shown up at the outer court plaza and were challenging our students one by one. They had already beaten every single person on the Lingyun rankings. I asked if Wu Feilong and Lin Yu had lost too. He snapped at me, saying Lin Yu left the academy after I defeated him and still hadn't come back, and Wu Feilong was still recovering from the beating I gave him. I was the only one left who could put these Tsanglei students in their place. He added that one of them was specifically calling me out by name. I narrowed my eyes. The only Tsanglei student I had ever encountered was Lei Qing, the one I met in the Thundercloud Mountains. It had to be him. I agreed to go. I had been bored lately anyway and needed to stretch my muscles. When I arrived at the outer court plaza, I heard mocking laughter everywhere. Tsanglei students were sneering that our academy's fighters were pathetic. They bragged that Lei Qing alone had demolished every genius on our rankings. He had broken through to the innate realm and none of our people could even survive a single move against him. I looked over and saw about a dozen Tsanglei students standing in the center of the plaza. Their leader was the tall young man I recognized, Lei Qing. In front of him, 5 or 6 of our students were beaten and battered. My eyes turned cold. I let my voice ring across the entire plaza. A handful of Tsanglei students dared to come cause trouble at our academy? They shouldn't think for a second that Lingyun had no one to fight back. Everyone's eyes snapped to me the moment I spoke. Our Lingyun students lit up with excitement, shouting that I had finally appeared and that these Tsanglei guys were done for. Lei Qing smirked coldly and said he thought I was going to hide like a coward forever. I glanced at him casually and called him what he was, someone I had already beaten before. I asked if he was the one who hurt our students. He shrugged and called them trash who deserved what they got for challenging him when they had no ability. He said the only reason he came to the Lingyun Academy was for me. Back in the Thundercloud Mountains, I had humiliated him in formations and killed one of his fellow students right in front of him. For someone as proud as him, that was an unbearable shame. After breaking through to the innate realm, he came straight here to pay me back tenfold. I told him he wasn't worthy of defeating me. I beat him in the Thundercloud Mountains, and I could beat him again now. But first, I needed to get some payback for our injured students. I vanished from where I stood. In the next instant, screams filled the air as every single Tsanglei student behind Lei Qing was sent flying like broken kites. One move, and they were all on the ground. Our students erupted with cheering and laughter, saying it felt incredible to watch. Lei Qing's face turned dark as thunder. He asked if I had gone too far. I told him it was only fair. If he could hurt our students, I could hurt his. I was simply giving him a taste of his own medicine. He laughed in rage and said I was the first person in years to truly anger him. He swore he would make me pay. I looked at him impatiently and told him to stop wasting time with talk. If he wanted to beat me, he should attack now, because once I made my move, he wouldn't even get the chance to throw a single strike. Lei Qing snarled that I shouldn't think he was the same person as before. A sword crackling with lightning appeared in his hand. His eyes flashed with electric light, and his innate realm aura exploded outward. With a roar, he unleashed his thunder sword technique, sending a bolt of lightning slashing straight at me. I watched it come with a calm expression. Lei Qing had broken through to innate, sure, but his combat power was nowhere near Wu Feilong's level. I waited until the lightning blade was less than 3 meters away, then casually threw a single punch. The thunderbolt shattered. In the same instant, I appeared beside him and landed another clean punch on his body. He was sent flying, blood spraying from his mouth, crashing to the ground several meters away. He stared up at me standing over him with absolute terror on his face. Our students went wild. They couldn't believe that a single casual punch was all it took to destroy an innate realm fighter. They knew I was strong, but not this overwhelmingly strong. I looked down at Lei Qing and told him to take his Zonglei people and get lost. If they didn't have the skills, they shouldn't come embarrassing themselves. His face turned even paler. Feeling the mocking stares from all the Lingyun students around him, he couldn't even look at me. He gathered his beaten companions and fled. With that settled, I decided there wasn't much keeping me at the academy anymore. Life here had gotten boring. The 9 Academies tournament was coming up soon, so I planned to head to the imperial capital early. But first, I wanted to visit my family back in Songshan City, since I didn't know when I would return. I packed up and traveled back alone. But the moment I approached Songshan City, something felt wrong. The usually lively city was dead quiet, filled with a tense, murderous atmosphere. When I reached the city gate, several guards carrying spears blocked my way. They told me today was the day the Lin family would destroy the Jiang family and take over Songshan City. No outsiders were allowed in. The Lin family was back. My face turned completely dark. My eyes turned cold, and I vanished from the guard's sight. Before they could react, I sent them all flying. I stepped on one guard's chest and demanded to know what was happening in Songshan City. He told me everything. 3 days ago, Lin Yu had become the new head of the Lin family and led his people back to Songshan City. The Jiang family was in full retreat, barely holding on behind a defensive formation inside our family compound. The guard begged for mercy, claiming they were forced into this by Lin Yu. I told them I had already given them a chance once before. They chose to follow Lin Yu back here and go against my family. Since they were looking for death, I would grant it. 2 quick strikes, and the guards were finished. I turned into a blur and raced toward the Jiang family compound. At that same moment, Lin Yu was standing outside our gates with over 100 Lin family fighters. Beside him stood a powerful middle-aged man and a white-haired old man in Taoist robes. On our side, Jiang Kuei and Shueisha were leading our family's fighters, holding the entrance in a tense standoff. Lin Yu announced coldly that he had broken through our defensive formation. He told Jiang Kuei to use whatever tricks he had left, because nothing would stop him from destroying the Jiang family today. Jiang Kuei laughed in his face. He reminded Lin Yu that his own father had teamed up with the Li family against me and still got killed. He said even if Lin Yu broke through today, the Jiang family would never truly fall. The day I returned would be the day the Lin family was wiped out. Lin Yu's eyes flashed with anger and shame at the mention of my name. He drew his sword and ordered his men to charge, leave no one alive. But right at that moment, my ice-cold voice thundered across the scene. I told Lin Yu he didn't dare. I spared his worthless life last time only because of Elder Yin Songming's intervention. Yet here he was, causing trouble at my family's doorstep again. Since he was so determined to die, I would take his dog life today. Everyone froze when they heard my voice. Before they could react, I stepped through the air and landed with a thunderous boom right in front of the Jiang family gates. My family's fighters exploded with joy. They shouted that their family head had returned and that the Jiang family was saved. Jiang Kuei and Shueisha looked at me with relief and excitement. Jiang Kuei told me he had sent people to Lingyun City multiple times to notify me, but Lin Yu intercepted and killed every single messenger. He had already prepared for the worst and arranged for most of our people to escape through a secret tunnel. He never expected me to show up at this critical moment. I asked if they were okay. Jiang Kuei said he and Shueisha only had minor injuries, but then his expression turned bitter. Elder Jiang Chen had been killed by Lin Yu 2 days ago while buying time for the rest of the family. A wave of pure fury surged inside me. I told him not to worry. I would settle every last bit of this debt. If I hadn't decided on a whim to visit home, my entire family might have been destroyed. Shueisha warned me from behind that Lin Yu had brought an innate realm expert and a formations master. Without those two helpers, our family wouldn't have fallen so quickly. I scanned Lin Yu and the two men beside him with no expression on my face, then locked my gaze directly on Lin Yu. He trembled when our eyes met, an involuntary chill running through his body. He tried to hide his fear and shouted that since I was here, he would just kill me along with the rest of the family. I told him coldly that he wasn't worthy of killing me. I spared his miserable life last time for Elder Yin Songming's sake, and he repaid that mercy by attacking my family. Today, nobody would save him. Lin Yu grinned viciously and said he knew he couldn't beat me himself, which was exactly why he came prepared. He was confident that between the two of us, I would be the one to die today. I glanced at the innate expert and the formations master beside him and said they weren't enough. One innate fighter and one third-grade formations master had no right to think they could handle me. My voice rang out across the battlefield, cold and absolute. Since they dared to help Lin Yu attack my family, I would kill them all together. Anyone who touched the Jiang family would die without mercy. The innate expert beside Lin Yu was the first to lose his temper. He released his innate realm aura and glared at me, saying he wanted to see what right a brat like me had to act arrogant. I looked him over and told him his innate true energy was unstable and his foundation was weak. He had probably broken through less than 10 days ago. Someone like him, I could casually beat 10 of him. He laughed furiously, pulled out a curved blade, and said if I could survive 3 of his strikes, he might consider sparing me. I told him I originally planned to let him live a bit longer and deal with Lin Yu first. But since he was in such a hurry to die, I would grant his wish. I stomped the ground, and the stone tiles beneath my feet cracked apart. Then, while everyone stared in disbelief, I bent down and picked up a stone brick slightly bigger than my palm. I tossed it lightly in my hand and let my voice ring out. 3 strikes? He was giving himself way too much credit. He wouldn't get the chance to swing 3 times. To finish him, I only needed 1 brick. Everyone, Lin Yu's side and my own family, froze completely. My people couldn't believe what they just heard. Their family head was going to kill an innate expert with a brick. The middle-aged man burst out laughing and called it the biggest joke he had ever heard. He said he had seen plenty of arrogant people, but never anyone like me. He started swinging his blade, sending sharp waves of energy screaming through the air. But just as he was about to slash at me, I vanished. His pupils shrank with terror as a wave of ice-cold dread shot up from his feet. He tried to jump backward, but it was too late. I appeared behind him in an instant and smashed the stone brick into the back of his skull. A sharp crack echoed through the air. His eyes rolled back, his body went limp, and he collapsed face-first to the ground. Blood gushed from his shattered skull, quickly staining a large patch of the ground red. Everyone turned to stone. I actually did it. I killed an innate realm expert with a single brick to the head. My family's people went crazy with excitement. They laughed and cheered, saying their family head was incredible. Even innate experts got killed with a brick. They looked at the middle-aged man's corpse with pity, calling it probably the most humiliating death in the history of innate realm warriors. Shueisha stared at me in shock. When I first defeated him, I was only at the 9th level of chi control. Now, in such a short time, I had not only broken through to innate, but become strong enough to kill innate fighters with a brick. Any last trace of reluctance he felt about serving me vanished completely. On the other side, the Lin family fighters had turned ghostly white. Lin Yu stared at me in disbelief, stammering that I had broken through to the innate realm. Just half a month ago when we fought at the academy, I was only at the 9th level of chi control. He never imagined I could advance this fast and become far stronger than an ordinary innate expert. The fighter he worked so hard to hire had been killed like it was nothing. I told him nothing was impossible in this world. I already promised him his life was mine today. Before I finished speaking, golden light flashed on my fist, and I threw a devastating punch at him. He desperately tried to block with his sword intent, but we weren't on the same level anymore. One punch shattered his sword intent completely, and he was sent flying. He crashed to the ground several meters away, blood spraying from his mouth. He looked up at me with absolute terror and stammered that he was a genius from the Lingyun Academy. He said Elder Yin Songming still needed him for the 9 Academies tournament. He begged me not to kill him, threatening that the Elder wouldn't let me get away with it. I laughed coldly. Did he think dropping Yin Songming's name would scare me? Even if the Elder were standing right here, I would still kill him. From the moment Lin Yu brought his people back to Tsongshan City and attacked my family, no one in this world could save him. I activated my sky-treading steps, appeared above his head in a flash, and stomped down hard. Lin Yu screamed, "No," but before the word even left his mouth, my foot was already crushing down on his head. The stone ground shattered into a 3-meter crater, and Lin Yu's body disappeared beneath the rubble. The white-haired formations master saw me kill the innate expert with a brick and then stomp Lin Yu to death, without mercy. Panic overtook him, and he spun around to flee. I told him to stop. My family's territory wasn't a place he could come and go as he pleased. I appeared in front of him before he could take 2 steps. He begged me to let him go, promising never to interfere in Tsongshan City's affairs again. I stared at him coldly. Did he realize that by breaking my family's defensive formation for Lin Yu, he nearly caused the destruction of my entire clan? He thought one promise would make everything fine. If I didn't kill him, how could I face the family members who died because of what he did? I threw a punch at his head. He quickly activated a defensive formation scroll and barely blocked it. Then he started shouting about his identity. He said he was a 3rd-grade formations master and a guest elder of the Lingyun City Lord's mansion. If I touched a hair on his head, the city lord would never forgive me. I smiled. So that was where Lin Yu found his helpers, from the city lord's mansion. The old man saw me pause and thought I was scared. His attitude turned arrogant again. He warned me that offending the city lord's mansion meant the Jiang family could forget about surviving in Lingyun territory. I laughed with pure contempt. The city lord's mansion? Impressive? I had already offended the city lord's own son. Why would I care about some guest elder? I told him my rule still stood. Anyone who attacked the Jiang family would die without exception. Even if, by Jin Tian, the city lord himself, dared to come after my family, I would kill him all the same. My flame dragon sword appeared in my hand. The white-haired old man's face filled with terror. He started desperately trying to negotiate, saying my martial talent was extraordinary and my future was limitless. But fighting the city lord's mansion at my current level would be suicide. He offered to speak to the city lord on my behalf and form an alliance between the mansion and the Jiang family. I stared at him blankly and asked why the city lord's people came to help Lin Yu in the first place. He confessed immediately. It was the young city lord, Bai Zishuan, who arranged everything. He promised that once he returned, he would explain everything to the city lord and make sure they never opposed my family. I laughed coldly. Just as I suspected, that idiot Bai Zishuan was behind this. Since he was the one who sent them, there was nothing to discuss. The old man had to die. My sword intent erupted. A cold flash of blade light cut through the air. A thin red line appeared across the old man's throat, and blood sprayed everywhere. He stared at me with wide, disbelieving eyes as life faded from them. Looking at his corpse, I realized something. As long as Bai Zishuan was around, the city lord's mansion would always be a threat to my family. Before leaving the Lingyun region, I would have to pay a visit to the city lord's mansion and eliminate that threat for good. Behind me, the remaining Lin family members were terrified. An elder dropped to his knees, trembling, and begged for mercy. He swore they were forced by Lin Yu and would never set foot in Tsongshan City again. I told him it was too late for begging. When Lin Tianxiong attacked me and I killed him, I let the Lin family go. That was their chance. Now they came back and attacked my family again. How could I possibly spare them a second time? If you don't pull weeds out by the root, they grow back in spring. I gave the order, kill them all, leave no one alive. Jiang Kuei and Xue Sha didn't hesitate. They led our fighters forward, and within moments, every last Lin family member was dead. My sudden return to Tsongshan City saved the Jiang family from destruction. After wiping out the Lin family, peace returned to the city. But I didn't leave right away. I spent 3 full days strengthening my family's defenses. I created several powerful 3rd-grade formation scrolls and refined plenty of pills to boost everyone's strength. I even made pills that could help Jiang Kuei and Xue Sha break through to the innate realm. After giving Jiang Kuei some final instructions, I left Tsongshan City. When I returned to Lingyun City, I didn't go back to the academy. Instead, I walked straight toward the city lord's mansion. To prevent another incident like the Lin family attack, I had to deal with the city lord's mansion before leaving the Lingyun region for good. The mansion sat in the center of Lingyun City, fronted by a massive plaza. Crowds of people were lined up at the entrance, waiting to conduct business. I barely paused before walking straight toward the main gate. Four guards stepped out and blocked my path. One of them barked that this was the city lord's mansion and unauthorized people weren't allowed inside. If I had business, I should register and wait in line. I looked at them calmly and shook my head. I told them I wasn't here to do business. I was here to cause trouble. Every eye in the plaza snapped to me instantly. People couldn't believe a teenager had come to the city lord's mansion alone to openly pick a fight. The guards pulled their weapons and warned me to leave or face their blades. I told them the city lord's mansion meant nothing to me. Today, I planned to turn this whole place upside down. Before they could react, I threw a casual punch. A fist shadow flashed through the air. The lead guard flew backward and slammed into the stone steps at the entrance. Dead. The remaining 3 guards stared at me in horror. They couldn't believe I had actually killed one of their own right at the mansion's front door. Everyone in the plaza stood frozen with their eyes wide open. Some kid had really come alone to attack the city lord's mansion, killing a guard with his first move. The whole scene was absolutely insane. People in the plaza were losing their minds. They couldn't believe some teenage nobody was openly attacking the city lord's mansion. They thought I had to be insane or suicidal. I ignored all the chatter and looked calmly at the 3 remaining guards. I told them I came to settle a score with Bai Zishuan, not to go on a killing spree. If they wanted to live, they should step aside. One guard laughed in my face and said I wasn't worthy of going after their young master. He said I killed one of their people and had the nerve to make threats. There was no way I was leaving alive. He called the other 2, and all 3 charged at me together. I shook my head. I already warned them not to throw their lives away. I threw one punch. 3 thuds sounded one after another, and all 3 guards were sent flying. They hit the ground dead before they could even scream. They were at least 5th or 6th level chi control warriors, and I killed all 3 with a single casual blow. The entire plaza fell silent with shock. I looked up toward the depths of the mansion and let my cold voice echo through the air. I called out to Bai Zishuan, telling him Jiang Chen was here to settle accounts. He needed to come out and face death right now. Everyone in the plaza was stunned to realize I was genuinely here to go after the young city lord. A thunderous roar erupted from inside the mansion. A huge, muscular man appeared on top of the wall, then leaped down and landed right in front of me. He saw the 4 dead guards on the ground and glared at me with murderous intent. I looked at him calmly and asked if he was Bai Jintian, the city lord. He exploded with rage, shouting that I had no right to speak the city lord's name. He announced he was He-Du, the commander of the mansion's guards. He said I had killed his men and insulted the mansion's dignity, and now I had to die. A fierce, overwhelming aura burst from his body. The crowd gasped when they saw He-Du appear. They said he was a famous innate realm expert and the commander of the city lord's guards. Everyone figured I was dead for sure, but I stayed completely calm. I told He-Du one last time that I was here for Bai Zishuan and his father. If he insisted on getting in my way, he would be the one to die. He laughed and called me a brat talking big. He stomped the ground and launched himself at me like lightning, his claws wrapped in fierce innate energy, reaching for my head. I didn't dodge at all. I just threw a straightforward punch right back at him. A thunderous crash echoed through the air. In the next instant, He-Du's clothes exploded off his body. He turned into a bloody mess and flew backward like a broken kite. The entire plaza went completely silent. Nobody could process what they just saw. The mighty commander of the city lord's mansion, a renowned innate realm expert, had been destroyed by a single punch from a teenager. He crashed into the ground several meters away, smashing a huge crater. Blood poured from his mouth as he stared at me with horror, asking who I was. One punch. That was all it took to critically wound him. I looked at him coldly and told him I warned him not to interfere. Did he think being an innate fighter made him special? Killing innate experts from the city lord's mansion was nothing new for me. His face changed drastically when he heard that. He asked if the other commander and the formations master were dead too. 3 days ago, they had been sent to Tsongshan City on Bai Zishuan's orders. Neither of them came back. Bai Zishuan was about to send He-Du to investigate, but before he could, I showed up at their door, and I turned out to be a monstrous talent beyond anything they imagined. Hidu took a deep breath, pulled out a signal token, and threw it into the sky. A deafening explosion echoed above the city lord's mansion. The crowd was stunned when they recognized the emergency signal. They said it was a special call that could summon powerful fighters from the Lingyun Academy to help the city lord's mansion. People looked at me with genuine admiration. I had single-handedly forced the mansion commander to use their last resort. Hidu knew this was serious. He could feel that my strength was unfathomable, possibly equal to the city lord himself. I was the most dangerous enemy the mansion had ever faced. Squads of armored guards poured out from inside the mansion. Then the city lord himself appeared, by Jiang Chen, dressed in magnificent purple and gold robes, walking with the confidence of a king. Behind him, I spotted a familiar face. It was Bai Zishuan, the young city lord. His expression turned ugly the moment he saw me. Bai Jiang frowned at the battered Hidu and demanded to know why he used the emergency signal. Hidu tried to explain that I was extremely powerful, but Bai Jiang cut him off angrily, calling me just some troublemaking kid who didn't warrant such measures. He glared at me and demanded my name and why I was causing trouble. I told him calmly, Jiang Chen, from the Jiang family of Tsongshan City. As for why I was here, he should ask his son Bai Zishuan. He snorted and said no matter what his son did, the city lord's mansion wasn't a place for me to run wild. If he didn't kill me today, he would lose all face in Lingyun City. He waved his hand and a massive phantom palm made of innate true energy formed in the air and came crashing down toward me. I activated my sky-treading steps and stomped directly on the giant palm. It shattered under my foot instantly. As the pieces scattered, my ice-cold voice rang through the air. I told him his son secretly conspired with others and sent the mansion's fighters to attack my family, nearly destroying us completely. Yet he, the city lord, didn't bother asking a single question before attacking me. I told him the position of Lingyun City Lord needed a new owner because he wasn't fit for the job.